era in New England. The Patriots officially introduced Gerard Mayo as their next head coach. The former New England assistant coach says he's excited to take the next step of his journey in Foxborough. One day after interviewing Mayo's predecessor, Bill Belichick, for their head coach opening, the Falcons met with another big name for the gig, Jim Harbaugh. The University of Michigan head coach also interviewed for the Chargers head coaching job on Monday. A busy week for Rams defensive coordinator Raheem Morris. He interviewed for the Panthers head coach job Wednesday and will meet with the Commanders Thursday and Seahawks Friday. This has been NFL Network Now on the Westwood One Radio Network.
Jackson Hewitt has a plan to get your tax refund fast with a buck here, buck there. Here a buck, there a buck, everywhere a buck.
You don't have to wait weeks for your tax refund. Get money sooner with a no-fee refund advance loan at Jackson Hewitt.
On this loan, there's a money today guarantee. E-I-E-I-DO.
Don't settle for chicken feed. Get fast bucks at Jackson Hewitt today. No-fee refund advance loans by Republic Bank offered to eligible clients. Money today guarantee if approved for a loan on a prepaid card. Details at jacksonhewitt.com.
January is no time for the same old meals. HelloFresh is here to kickstart 2024 with enticing flavors and fresh ingredients paired with easy-to-follow recipes and delivered to your door. They'll keep your taste buds guessing with their most expansive menu yet. Over 45 delicious recipes to choose from each week. Right now, get free breakfast for life with code RadioBreakfast at HelloFresh.com/RadioBreakfast. That's one free breakfast item per box while subscription is active with code RadioBreakfast at HelloFresh.com/RadioBreakfast.
What's going on? Good morning. 6 o'clock from the 104.5 The Zone Studios. I'm Robert Walsh. Two coaches who were believed to be on the hot seat will seemingly coach in 2024. Jerry Jones put out a statement yesterday reiterating his faith in Mike McCarthy. The Cowboys have gone 12-5 each of the past 3 seasons and had the NFL's #1 scoring offense in 2023 with McCarthy calling plays. Also in the NFC East, Nick Sirianni met with owner Jeffrey Lurie and is expected to have a plan for how he's going to improve the Eagles. The pitch is going to include potential new coordinators, assistant coaches. That's where the report came from of him reaching out to other coaches. In Titans coaching news, the Titans wrapped up a virtual interview with Dan Quinn and have contacted Bengals offensive coordinator Brian Callahan to schedule a second and in-person interview for their head coaching position. Callahan did a virtual interview last week, and in-person interviews can't start till next week, with the Titans still wrapping up their virtuals this week. With divisional weekend rapidly approaching, the Ravens are getting healthier. Mark Andrews, who was injured in a November 16th game against the Bengals, practiced fully yesterday. Andrews has not yet been activated from the injured reserve, but a roster spot was open for him with the release of Melvin Gordon. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and the Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Thursday morning at RKW as we welcome you in to a brand new day and a brand new icy snow-covered morning in Music City, USA, where Mike McCarthy and Nick Sirianni still have jobs. Mike Vrabel still has no interviews, and the Titans have a first candidate with a second interview scheduled in person next week when those begin. 615-737-1045 is our number. Streaming live on 1045 The Zone TV, where you can see the beautiful faces for radio of Ramon Foster, Kayla Anderson, Robert Walsh, our producer, and myself, Will Bowling. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, people.
Yeah, another icy morning out there. Be careful though. The roads are actually, if you're not going on plowed roads, they are a little bit icy.
Yes,
this
still
morning.
Definitely.
So be careful out there.
I still had to kick it into 4 high on
Did you?
road out of my street getting out and actually getting on the ramp too. The ramp here
ramps.
coming off of DeMond is usually where it gets kind of tricky too. It's a lot of that type of stuff. If you have 4 high, use it. If you have 4-wheel drive, front wheel drive, use that also properly. Rear wheel drive, try to control it as best you possibly can.
I know. I feel like we're the road patrol because we literally are on the roads before anybody else gets out there. But honestly, we're all coming from different parts, so it makes sense for us to share the stories of how the roads are.
Do you guys mind if I do a little PSA real quick?
You may.
Yeah.
If you guys are going to be out braving the cold out here in the elements and you're going to drive, you should try to be as safe as possible. And that means knocking the snow off the roof of your car.
Knew that was coming.
I was behind somebody yesterday, and I guess their car had just sat in the driveway for 3 days because it was all of the snow. It was all 7.5 inches of snow just careening back into the front of my vehicle's windshield. Also, knock the snow off your brake lights, because people need to be able to see those. People need to be able to see when you're braking. I got beside this dude, man. I have a problem. You guys, I might need an intervention. I have a little bit of road rage where I am not the nicest person visually when something upsets me.
Visually.
So I'm kind of visually impaired to other drivers when things happen.
A lot of one-finger salutes?
No, because that will get you in trouble. I give people thumbs ups and go, "Oh, good driving,"
I do that too,
and then,
actually.
"Oh, you're a good driver. Good driver." People dislike that as well. But let's just be safe. Let's knock all the snow off our vehicles and knock all the snow off the back of them. What are we doing?
That's a
Fair.
good point.
Yeah, have y'all seen the repercussions of the people who don't do that? It's kind of bad. Yeah, it should be a responsible thing to do is to knock that snow off. Like, get your kids or somebody to knock that off because it does suck to get hit in the windshield with it's a heavy amount of snow.
Like an avalanche.
Yeah, it's a
on the
heavy
road.
amount of snow.
If you're working downtown or if anyone is listening who is plowing roads downtown, Demumbrian is an ice rink.
Ooh. Good heads up there.
It is literally an ice rink. So I was on my way here, and if it looks like I still have my coat on and I just got out of the cold, it's because I did, because I was halfway here, and then I immediately, in the middle of an intersection, yeeted over and went a different way because Demumbrian is... Like, I don't even know if my tires, I would have gotten stuck, probably.
Really? Yeah. Oh, man.
Because there was one, wall of snow, at the beginning of the intersection, where it was, no snow, ice, and then, a big bank, to enter the intersection.
It didn't help yesterday that we got a good amount of sun to kind of melt some of the snow, and then last night was just cold as hell again and froze it all over.
Mm-hmm.
Rosa Parks underneath that bridge where you go from 8th and Church down that hill under the bridge to go to Germantown, that was all you had was little, what? Why are you laughing at me? All you had was a little tire track.
That was just him right there being him.
I shouldn't have been in his ear. That was my fault.
Okay.
Well, that's the thing. Bridges
you
can be
later.
crazy because it's like, I don't know why they freeze more, but any type of bridges above or below, always slow down on those too.
I did make a milestone yesterday, everyone. A big moment in my life yesterday.
I
have finished The Sopranos.
You did?
Wow.
I have finished The Sopranos. I have 3 words to sum it up. Don't stop believing. Don't stop believing.
What?
Is that song at
All
the
right,
end?
if anyone has not watched The Sopranos and doesn't want to hear the ending of The Sopranos, I'm going to give you 30 seconds. You can listen to an audiobook. You can listen to jazz music for 30 seconds. I don't even know if I want to wait a full 30 seconds.
We
We're
buried
gonna
the
keep
lead.
going.
You go ahead. No.
It's been 11 years. All right. No, it's been longer than that. It's been 17 years since the show ended. Okay, anyway, I thought my TV had messed up. I thought that the power had gone out.
Yep.
I liked the ending, though. I thought it was perfect.
I'm glad.
I thought it was perfect.
I'm glad.
I did too, but why did you like the ending?
Because you know what happens, and Bobby Bacalieri says earlier in the show, he says, you know, when it happens, Tone, you're not even going to hear it. It's just going to end. And that's what happened. It was a Pavlovian response that it created of like ding of the door opening, look up. Ding of the door opening, look up. So you expect him to look up, but you kept seeing what Tony was seeing. Mm-hmm. So then when he looks up and he sees nothing, he got whacked.
And there was also conversation between the guy that he took bread from earlier, and he went to Florida, and his wife told him there's only one way this can end also.
Right. You either die or go to prison.
Yeah.
So, now that we've discussed it, now we can talk about the conspiracy theories of who whacked Tony Soprano and why.
615-737-1045.
Do you have a suspicion or an inkling who you think might have done it?
I don't.
It's the cat
I've not gone that far into it yet.
I've gone down the rabbit hole. It's the guy that had a heist that ended up moving to Florida. I forget the character's name, but I ran across it about a month ago, probably because you were watching it.
Probably.
It came through my algorithm, Will, and it was somebody in the family.
He shows up at the beginning of episode 7, and he's like, Tony, my wife got pregnant. I want out. And that's that is one of the ideas.
Because he moved to Florida, right? He was trying to get out.
He's trying to.
Yes.
I think it was Paulie.
You think it was Paulie?
Because Tony, Will is like, how could this happen? If you watch
Inconceivable.
If you watch it, Tony is so worried that someone is going to come whack him. Yeah. And in the meantime, Paulie is sitting out front of the meat market sun tanning. He is not worried at all. And as Tony leaves, a black cat crosses in front of Paulie. The cat that that says, that cat can see things. That cat knows things about the dead.
Yep.
I think Paulie did it because Paulie always wanted more power. Paulie got looked over when Silvio was elevated.
Yeah. Yep.
I think Paulie was the person who got Tony whacked.
I love all of these things. 615-737-1045. You guys don't understand, and we're done spoiling the ending of The Sopranos now. If you want to come back to us, but you guys do not understand though the amount of content that covers sports in the world that talks about The Sopranos all the time that I've had to not listen to. Yeah. Like my favorite podcast, Pardon My Take. I can't listen to it because they notoriously, on one of their first ever episodes, spoiled the ending of The Sopranos, and they talk about it all the time. So I finally can now go back to just living a normal life. I did after I finished it last night, I did 2 hours of just Google searching about where are all the actors now? Whatever happened to the fact that Paulie was actually a gangster in the 70s, that actor is crazy.
A lot of those.
And Silvio was in Bruce Springsteen's band as a guitarist.
Steven Van Zandt.
All these things that I could not look up. And then now I'm like, all right, so whatever happened to yada, 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 because I didn't want to know what happened to their character.
Did they ruin it still, knowing that you knew somewhat what the ending was?
I thought that he was going to die. But I knew I'd seen a Google search while I was doing this show once that said, does Tony Soprano die? But I was like, okay, but people would search that anyway. Sure. So I had no idea what was going to happen. I had no clue. It was, I can't believe I went all that way through 6 seasons over 7 years and did not know what was going to happen.
Steven Van Zandt, Silvio, guy who plays Silvio Dante, has an incredible story for how he got this role. So he was just going to be a one-off character. And then the directors and the producers loved him so much that they were like, no, you have to play somebody in Tony's crew. Gave him a job.
Did you see how what's his name? Gaddafi. How do you say his main character's last name?
Gandolfini.
Gandolfini. You see how he actually pretty much died too.
Yeah.
He was living the
descended
mob life.
into being Tony Soprano.
He did.
All the reports that I read were that he was very nice to all of the cast and crew.
But he had his problems.
He would disappear for 4 days.
And wait staffs and people, anybody who did the odd jobs, when he went to restaurants, he tipped very well, but it was just, he got a hold of some stuff, and stuff happens when you're.
So there you go. So congratulations. Crazy. If you've been annoyed of hearing us talk about The Sopranos for the last 3 months, your journey has come to an end.
Has it been 3 months?
I started at beginning of November, so ish, 2.5.
Wow.
615-737-1045 is our number. Coming up this morning, Coach Mack of Titans Radio at 7:20. AtoZ Sports Lions beat writer Mike Payton joins us at 8:20 this morning. He had a great profile on Lions defensive coordinator Aaron Glenn on AtoZsports.com a week ago and thinks that Aaron Glenn is as strong, if not stronger, of a candidate for a head coaching position as Lions OC Ben Johnson. We'll talk to Mike Payton about that coming up at 8:20 this morning. Thursday 3 and hour number 4 at 9:20 as we make you some money on the divisional round weekend, preview all the games, and take your phone calls throughout the morning at 615-737-1045. But when we come back, the headlines from Dan Graziano yesterday where one candidate will get the second interview for the Titans. The Titans finish up a 5th interview last night. And we hear from Jeremy Fowler of ESPN.com as he tells us the 2 names to watch for the Titans search. It's RKW brewed by 8th The Roast as Hour 1 rolls on 104.5 The Zone. Thursday morning on RKW is brewed by 8th and Rose. Coach Mack in an hour. Mike Payton of AtoZ Sports at 8:20. Your phone calls throughout the morning at 615-737-1045. Last night, from Dan Graziano of ESPN, per source, the Titans have contacted Bengals OC Brian Callahan to schedule a second and in-person interview for their head coach position. Callahan did a virtual interview last week. In-person interviews cannot start until next week. Titans still wrapping up virtuals this week. And last night, the Titans officially made it 5 virtual interviews as they wrapped up a conversation with Dallas Cowboys defensive coordinator Dan Quinn. This is kind of like when you try out for the musical at school and then the callback list is posted. Got some callbacks.
It's like my dance performances. Like, did you get to the next level?
Straight up?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
It was like a nervous feeling.
I couldn't imagine
Did I get that call?
My wife was messing to me yesterday about dancing. I was like, yeah, I'm not a big dancer. But either way, I
I'm sure you're a pretty good
What's she
dancer.
trying to get you to go to a class?
No, we were talking about my
Ballroom.
fraternity stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Cheyenne was trying to get me to
Okay.
go to a hip hop and jazz dance class with her.
Oh, I would
Are
love
you
to see
serious?
that.
Yeah, I would never go to do that ever.
I'd
in the
have to
history
come
of
in and
ever.
film it.
Nope, I will never do it.
Don't see any scenario of that.
I do remember my first, not callback, but name posting.
Yeah.
7th grade basketball. First time I was put under that scrutiny, and I was just so scared. They posted the list of people in the hallway, and I was on that list and stayed on that list after that. Absolutely. But so I can only imagine what Callahan is feeling for a callback
Yeah.
because a lot of coaches, Pierce hadn't been called back so far as I know, and other coaches either. So that's some cool stuff now that we really get into the meat and potatoes of what this search is going to look like.
Yeah, what jumps out about Brian Callahan? I know we've talked a lot about him, and fans have dubbed him one of their probably top 3 candidates, but first guy to get the interview to come back, and he was the first guy to interview virtually.
And I wanted to revisit, this has been my guy since the first day in terms of us picking what coaches you thought would be the best fit here. And so somebody that I have that's close to the situation, I want to go over these remarks again that he said, because I think it sticks out about just the person he is, the leader he could be for this team. He's a really smart, methodical guy who has a good presence about him. Sounds like he is a calm guy, he told me, when it comes to being in his business, but he can be fiery when needed, quote, does a good job in front of the room. As far as the football background goes, I know Will's going to get to that. Zach Taylor also talked to Ben Baby, who is a Titans reporter, a Cincinnati Bengals reporter. And he pretty much said that Brian Callahan coordinates everything having to do with this offense. He establishes the whole structure of the offense. On game day, he and I are in constant communication. That is play calling, and that is establishing an offense. He has developed every position we have. So for those of you who are wondering about the play calling, which technically is not his duty, he is pretty much, in a way, calling plays, or at least telling coach or helping coach decide those play calls.
He's setting the structure of it up.
Yeah.
He's been in numerous places, helped franchise quarterbacks a while, but that's my thing too, as far as cultivating this offense is going to be one thing on how he's going to either make the calls himself, like if he becomes the head man here and becomes the actual OC and play caller like Andy Reid and others around the NFL, Zach Taylor around the NFL, then you understand that he knows how to cultivate this. On the other side of it is also the management part of the team. Now, if he is also setting up the offensive line coaches, wide receiver coach, et.cetera., then he understands what that structure does look like. He's got a background in it. It's been mostly offensive, so he's going to have to have a very strong defensive, leader to lean on also. And that's where I think the Titans going to be looking for a lot of stuff out of the next coach they hire. If you're primarily who and how are you collaborating with? Then those are going to be the words that have to come out of these guys' mouth, I think, moving forward. Do I think he's a strong candidate? Yes. I think every single one that we've brought up has been a strong guy, and all of them have their deficiencies too.
Yep.
You got to look and say, to your point, Kayla, well, Brian Callahan hasn't called plays. Brian Callahan has never actually been a coordinator controlling of an entire side of the ball. Others have. He hasn't.
Right.
So
I think the weakness for Callahan beyond that even is how many play callers would be successful with Joe Burrow as their quarterback. That's where I am with that. That is a very talented offense with 2 number 1 wide receivers, with an excellent slot receiver. They've had CJ Uzomah. They've had it's just a really good team. How many offensive coordinators who are less than head coaches would have succeeded with that cast of characters?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You should be able to.
I mean, it's why Adam Gase got a head coaching job, was because he was tied to Peyton Manning.
Ugh.
And
How
that's
many
why,
offensive coordinators would have succeeded with Peyton Manning?
And that's why you have to be careful with all these OCs, though, really. Bobby Slowick, I mean, we're saying the same thing about what he has in C.J. Stroud. That is the risk you take with some of these offensive coordinators, these younger guys. It's like, what do you do? Do you get somebody who has just more experience that might be a little bit more of a defensive-minded guy? Because there's not a lot of offensive guys that they've interviewed that have a ton of experience. They're all, from what I've seen, for the most part, younger guys, right?
Yep. And to your point, too, Kayla and Will, on either side of these things, you got to look at the guy that really set all this up as of late, and that's Sean McVay. Mm-hmm. Sean McVay came as Tampa Bay offensive assistant in 2008. Florida Tuskers, Washington Redskins assistant. Washington Redskins tight end coach for 2 years.
That's where all the good coaches came from, was Washington.
You know, no, for real. And then he was the offensive coordinator at SAS for 2 years, for 14 and 15, before becoming the head coach at 33. It's going to be a risk, whoever you hire, unless you try to go get Belichick, you try to go get Dan Quinn, or whoever the heck may be, you know, one of those older names that we know. And even if you go after Dan Quinn, what side of the ball is he? Defensive. Is he the other version of Vrabel too? We can't compare.
I know. That's what's hard too. A lot of those defensive guys are that way, right?
And I know they're somewhat similar to Vrabel, but we can't compare everybody to Vrabel from the optics and public standpoint of everything that's moving forward, right? That's what we, I think, have to get over as a fan base here. It's not everybody's going to be Vrabel, even if they are cut from somewhat the same cloth. The thing that I think that got Vrabel ousted was what? The how he works inside the building with collaborating. It seems to have been, or whether the power, whatever the struggle was inside the building, it wasn't because of his coaching. And it's okay to say, hey, we can go get a similar guy to have better traits than he did at this current moment in his career.
We asked ESPN's Jeremy Fowler about Aaron Glenn yesterday. He confirmed the Titans' interest in the Lions' defensive coordinator and also gave us a second name for the Titans.
I've heard his name a little bit. You know, two names I've heard. It's very early, so you don't want to couch that. But like 2 names I've heard that will be intriguing are Aaron Glenn and Bobby Slowick, the Houston OC. You know, Slowick having an offense that would be easily transferable for Will Levis from what he did at Kentucky, and you know, the Titans ownership has a base in Houston, so they've seen firsthand what the Texans offense has been doing. And then the 49ers connection with Slowick and GM Ran Carthon. So, you know, those things are make Slowick one to watch. And then Aaron Glenn, I think that's a byproduct of the Titans looking for a culture builder. You know, they want somebody who's going to be energetic and have, you know, a good, healthy culture to foster and work collaboratively with Carthon. So that's where Glenn comes in.
The thing that still excites me about Bobby Slowick is he took a bunch of receivers that we had not heard of last year and made them household names this year, including a rookie in Tank Dell, Nico Collins, the young player out of Michigan, John Mechie, as he got back in the mix there. Dalton Schultz, obviously, was a bit of a household name coming over from the Dallas Cowboys. But I think when you look at just the amount of separation that lesser-known receivers were getting in Houston this year with a rookie quarterback who had one of the best rookie quarterback seasons of all time, that's where I get excited about Slowick.
Yeah, and then watching the games that they've played. I mean, like you said, what he's done with Nico Collins, and not just that, between the 3 running backs that they have. I mean, legitimately looking at what Devin Singletary and Dameon Pierce has done with just those 2.
Right.
Think about the games that they've had offensively. So you know the run structure of the offense is going to be a part of it. But you also say to yourself, well, goodness, look at how Cincinnati's also set it up with Joe Mixon. You understand that both these dudes have a very strong run passion as far as trying to close out games. But looking at how Bobby Slowick's done with CJ so far, And the fact that that is a very young staff and look like they're having fun and they know how to go find talent. And, of course, the other thing, though, too, they were somewhat set up with the offensive line there. Laramie Thompson's one of the best. You signed other guys this offseason, and we talked about other dudes that they acquired this offseason.
Can we go over, again, just so I think people get a little bit confused on where we are in the interview process, who has interviewed and who has not, because there's been certain virtual interviews and nothing in person yet.
Yeah, those can't start until next week after the divisional round as far as in-person interviews go. So far they have spoken with Mike McDonald, the Ravens defensive coordinator, Mike Kafka, the Giants OC. Last night they spoke with Dan Quinn, the defensive coordinator of the Dallas Cowboys, Antonio Pierce, the interim head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders, and they have also spoken with Brian Callahan, the OC of the Cincinnati Bengals, who they know is going into the second round of interviews, which will be in person after the divisional round this upcoming weekend. So they still have left Bobby Slowick, Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator of the Detroit Lions. They also still have Aaron Glenn, Lions defensive coordinator, who it is interesting. He emerged as a candidate, and he hasn't been spoken to yet.
Right.
That is one of the interesting aspects of him already kind of being floated out there. Thomas Brown, the offensive coordinator of the Carolina Panthers. And then the 10th name was another human being. That is, again, I thought I was going to challenge myself to do this off the top of my head. But
so that's still a lot that they haven't interviewed
They're
yet.
halfway done with virtual interviews.
So this is not going to be, again, an easy process or a quick process, folks, because we're already towards the end of January. And they're just getting through the first round.
Yeah, they are. You said Mike McDonald, Will?
Yes.
Yes, yes, you did. You already said that.
Just give me Brian Johnson, Eagles OC. I forgot about him because he is, I think, the last candidate that I would want them to hire out of those 10.
Yeah.
Well, he is. I don't think he's going to keep his current job as the OC of the Eagles. So
he's already getting looked over his shoulder already.
That's right.
With that being said, I think now, as far as candidates and who I think they will take more serious, about 60-40 defensive guy being hired here.
You think 60%?
Really? Yeah.
Defense,
surprising.
really?
I do. I just think you'll find more balance in it and the trust of those guys being able to get this team built up properly and understand at the end of the day, defense will come first if you're trying to win championships. So if you can get a guy like that and find an OC that's going to stay for a few years to get Levis where he needs to and just stack off of there. Because here's the thing. If Levis gets established here to be the franchise guy, the offense of the new offensive coordinator will not change. The way it works in the NFL, and probably most colleges too, is they don't change entire offenses for quarterbacks who are franchise dudes. They work around it. What did you like from this last offense? We'll keep that. It's probably about a 70-30 change of you keeping all things that you had whenever you change coordinators. I've gone through 3 in my career, and the entire playbook, for the most part, stayed the same because the quarterback was already established on what he liked. You change protections. You change how you want to run routes at times and the flow of the offense. I think it's hard to find a good OC at times, but if you got a franchise quarterback, you're more capable of adjusting if you believe in him.
And the way that they're doing all these interviews keep in mind, folks, because when they interviewed for the head coaching job with head coach Mike Vrabel, who was eventually hired, Matt LaFleur was interviewed for that head coaching job. He ended up being the offensive coordinator for the Titans. So keep some of these names in mind, because it isn't to say that one of them might end up as the OC here if they do decide to go the defensive route, or maybe even vice versa. I just say more so with the offensive guys because they're younger, not as much experience. Most of the defensive guys on here have a little more experience. And I wanted to ask you that too. Why is it that defensive-minded head coaches seem to have like the culture tied to them, the kind of edge to them? Why is it that compared to what we see maybe with offensive coordinators who don't get labeled as that?
Less nerds.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm serious. There are more players on the side of the ball that coach, and you have a lot of offensive guys like Mike McDaniel who never played.
Yeah.
He's just a guy that understands routes and understands offense and knows how to scheme you wide open. But he's not a guy that played, so he's not a rah-rah guy.
That's very true. Most of the defensive guys have gotten it the hard way. And that's, again, like you say, you can draw something up You know what I'm saying? But defensively, you have to almost be in the trenches to understand what those guys are about, too.
We asked Jeremy Fowler about the risk involved with hiring a one-year offensive coordinator in Bobby Slowick and how Bobby Slowick, the Texans OC, is viewed around the league. This was Jeremy Fowler yesterday. Jeremy, specifically with Bobby Slowick, what is the opinion of him around the league and just the risk involved with hiring a coordinator after one big year? How are teams approaching him as one of the most coveted candidates in this cycle?
Well, with a little bit of caution, but that also acknowledging that he's been impressive, how he's schemed up some clean looks for C.J. Stroud really all year, and they've produced despite injuries all over the field and all over the offensive line, wide receiver. They've dealt with a lot. Here they are in the second round of the playoffs. So certainly his body of work in 1 year has been impressive, but he's very young. He looks young. His experience says he's young in the game. And so those are factors that teams will have to weigh. It's interesting, right? Because sometimes you want to get on a hot coach a year early, because then next year it's going to be even harder to get him. You look at Ben Johnson, right? Last year he took his name out of the running for some jobs, and now this year he's going to be a top guy who will probably have multiple options. So if you think Bobby Slowick is going to be that next year, then maybe you just get him this year and try to get ahead of the pack. But that does come with a risk, with a lack of experience too.
I certainly have a hard time believing that Bobby Slowick would come here as an OC under a defensive head coach. It doesn't make any sense for him to leave a situation where he is tied to the best young quarterback in this league right now and go mentor one who is less of a sure thing behind less of a sure thing offensive line with no receivers.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one guy in Bobby Slowick I think we can put out of the conversation of, hey, if Aaron Glenn's the head coach, maybe he'll come be the OC. Bobby Slowick is either a head coach here or he's a head coach somewhere next year, in my opinion.
Or he decides to stay one more year in Houston because he thinks he can. Okay,
year.
Because he can get something out of it. And look, that's what Brian Callahan did. He had opportunities the last couple of years. He stayed there and has been there 5 years with Zach Taylor. So it's not, out of the norm, I guess.
Man, to y'all point, if y'all want a quick research, who brought this up a second ago and I laughed. It's like, yeah, right, honestly. He was like, great coaches have come out of Washington.
Mm-hmm.
Go
look at the 2012 staff, yeah.
Go look at the 11.
That's what I'm talking about, 2011 to 2012.
Look at this doggone staff.
Have you not seen the graphic they put up? So there's a graphic, and if you follow any Commanders fans, they always talk about this. So there's a graphic that CBS always does of, here are the coaches who were here. And it was, let me find it. It's ridiculous.
You want me to read off some of the names while you got it, or you got it?
Let's see. I've got it here. So you had it's the best staff ever created on a team that I believe went 6-10. Yeah. Went 6-10, picked 6th overall. You had Mike Shanahan, the head coach, with Kyle Shanahan, offensive coordinator, quarterbacks coach Matt LaFleur, tight ends coach Sean McVay, offensive assistant Mike McDaniel, defensive coordinator Jim Haslett, defensive backs coach Bob Slowick, defensive assistant Bobby Slowick. Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, Matt LaFleur, Bobby Slowick, all in the same staff.
And some names you don't know. I went to 12 just to see because I knew they lost people. Defensive backs in 2012, Raheem Morris.
Yeah.
Also, Richard Hightower. Danny Smith's the special teams coordinator in Pittsburgh now that's put out Pro Bowl after Pro Bowler also. Ike Hilliard. I mean, God, dog.
There are Commanders fans now will make a graphic, and it's like the Avengers, like all like presidents are on it, and it's like, wow, the 2011 Commander staff was crazy, and it's like
trash
Captain America. And,
that's a good way for Sloke to get his start. Was there, like with all those dudes?
Yep. Sure was.
Raheem Morris was there.
615-737-1045, our number. Coming up next, we're going to make Ramon Foster very, very happy. Alabama has its 2 best players in the transfer portal. Next. RKW is brewed up by 8th and Roast on 104.5 The Zone, 615-737-1045, the number. And streaming live on 104.5 The Zone TV, Facebook Live, YouTube, Twitter, or Twitch.
Twitch, please.
Hit the subscribe button while you're there if you're watching on YouTube. Well, yesterday, if you heard someone celebrating, you saw the sun shining in one specific place, it's because a couple more Alabama players entered the transfer portal, and Ramon Foster is very pleased with their decisions to take their talents elsewhere. Caleb Downs and Caden Proctor are entering the transfer portal, and Downs now replaces Walter Nolan as the number one player in the transfer portal for the 2024 cycle. And Caden Proctor, I think, according to On3, is number 2.
Oh, yeah?
Right behind him. Alabama is in a little bit of trouble.
A little bit of a pickle here.
A little bit of trouble because, again, they have a 30-day window that opened when Nick Saban retired for these players to leave, and they cannot replace these players because the portal has closed.
And what's wild is a bunch of Bama fans are acting like this is new, and everybody else experiences this with a coaching change. Oh, this sucks. These players are leaving. Like, no, you guys celebrated when Henry To'oTo'o went to your university. Like, you guys celebrated when you pulled Jahmyr Gibbs out of Georgia Tech.
Jermaine Burton from Georgia.
I mean, what we talking about here now? You know what I'm saying? Like, this is what happens. Like, this is why I said on the college side, the coach sells the brand. I love UT, and I'm, would have been a strong candidate regardless, but Coach Fulmer is one of the reasons why I went to UT. And also hey, Coach, one of the main things my mom asked, how long you going to be there? I'm going to be there, I promise you. And he was at the end of it. And, of course, after that, not so much. But you want to know about that stability. It's not to say that the coach that they hired, Kalen
DeBoer, yeah.
Kalen DeBoer is not going to be a good coach. But in football, it works like this. In most sports, you're going to have to prove it to me.
Yes.
And that ain't nothing against Kalen DeBoer at all. But I came to this school to play for that coach, and he ain't here no more. Oh, I'm laughing at the fact that now they have to face reality of, like, hustling to maintain being good, hustling to get recruits, changing your mindset and expectations because the Golden Goats is no longer there no more. And it ain't to say they can't go 12-0 next year. Who knows? DeBoer is apparently a really good coach.
Yeah.
But he ain't Nick.
Nobody's Nick. Nobody has been able to be at Nick's level. That's the toughest part about taking over a program. Not only is it Alabama where expectations are always high, but now you're following the GOAT with all those national championships and even in the down years winning records. He's had 16 losses. 16!
Yeah.
That's mind-blowing to me. And so Kalen DeBoer knew what he was getting himself into, too, when taking this job. Yeah, you probably can't turn it down because it's an opportunity of a lifetime. But let's be real. He better have done his research when it comes to what you're taking over and what the expectations are going to be and what will happen when you come into a program where you're not necessarily proven, at least here in the South. It's different. And like I can say that it's different from the Northwest and the Pac-12 and even the Big Ten. And now he has to realize, we're gonna have some guys that are gonna bounce out because these guys are looking at it too, like, well, he's not proven enough for us. We came to play for the greatest of all time. Yeah. Now it's how do you get that, staff together and make sure you're filling those holes, because if you got too many leaks, then you're really in trouble.
And I got to apologize real quick, too, because it almost sounded like I was speaking from a place of sympathy.
What's that?
Caleb Downs, the Alabama DB, though, is expected to transfer to Georgia.
Yeah.
So
I don't
know which one's better.
I truthfully, I'd much rather battle with what they got going on over there than to deal with what Saban does. I'll be real with you.
Either way, he's going to be guarding Brew McCoy.
There we go.
Yep.
Let's go to Greg in Coopertown up first on the phone line, 615-737-1045. Hey, Greg.
Good morning, y'all.
Morning.
Hey, are they not even trying to talk to Harbaugh, or have y'all heard anything? Or
that's correct. They will not be interviewing Harbaugh.
Why? Why not?
Because it's understood in most circles that Harbaugh is going to want the same kind of control that they claim Coach Vrabel did too. The whole thing is trying to have a hierarchy of how they deviate responsibilities around the building, from my understanding. And one man shouldn't have all that power is essentially what they're saying as far as the roster changes, team structure, and stuff like that. A lot of buildings around the NFL do have head coach do coaching duties with some input on the roster. The GM is the one that evaluate guys. That way you have a separation of performers on the field and performers in the front office.
I got you. I'm just curious because I think he'll take any team to the Super Bowl. He's that good.
Yeah, he is good. He's proven it at the college level. He proved it in the NFL when he was there. And that's what makes me wonder. I don't think it would work here. I really don't. I think they're looking for something separate in terms of the control part of it. But when he was with the 49ers, I don't know how much control he had over everything. I mean, it didn't seem that way, but he's more established in his career. He's, got the accolades now behind it. So it might be a little bit more of a power thing nowadays with him.
Up next, a reset of the headlines where the Cowboys and Eagles make a similar decision yesterday, and the rest of the NFL is celebrating as Hour 2 begins next.
What the heck's going on, you bunch of hooligans? It's 7 o'clock in the morning. It's 104.5 The Zone Studios. I'm Robert Walsh. Two coaches who believe to be in the hot seat are seemingly going to be available to coach in 2024 for their original teams. Jerry Jones put out a statement yesterday reiterating his fact in Mike McCarthy. The Cowboys have gone 12-5 in each of their last 3 seasons and had the NFL's number 1 scoring offense in 2023. Also in the NFC East, Nick Sirianni has met with owner Jeff Lurie and is expected to have a plan for how he is going to improve the Eagles. This would include a pitch on potential new coordinators and assistant coaches. In the Titans coaching search, the Titans wrapped up a virtual interview with Dan Quinn yesterday and have contacted Bengals offensive coordinator Brian Callahan to schedule a second and in-person interview for their head coaching position. Callahan did a virtual interview last week. In-person interviews can't happen until next week. Titans still wrapping up virtuals this week. Divisional round this weekend rapidly approaching, and the Ravens are getting healthier. Mark Andrews, who was injured in a November 16th game against the Bengals, practiced fully yesterday. Andrews has yet to be activated to the active roster, but a roster spot is open with the release of Melvin Gordon. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and the Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Seven a.m. in a snow-covered Nashville on a Thursday morning edition of RKW. We are brewed up by 8th and Roast with locations on 8th Avenue, Charlotte, the airport, and the Broadview at Vanderbilt. 8th and Roast Coffee cultivates community by the cup. You can find your favorite retail bag at every local Kroger and Whole Foods as well. 615-737-1045 is our number. Streaming live on 1045 The Zone TV, as well as the 1045 The Zone app. Every hour of the show posted for your listening pleasure on demand on Apple, Spotify, as well as 1045thezone.com every single morning the minute the show ends. Coming up in 15 minutes, Coach Mack of Titans Radio, his weekly visit on the show. Get him to vet some of the candidates who the Titans have spoken with, including Cowboys defensive coordinator Dan Quinn, who last night became the 5th coach to have a virtual interview with the Tennessee Titans.
There's a lot of coaches, a lot of names to keep up with. Is that one for you guys that you're like, Dan Quinn, why are we wasting our time? Because I've seen a couple people be like, why are we wasting our time on a defensive-minded guy who, just seems kind of like the norm that we've had in the past?
Oh, would you be upset if they hired a defensive guy?
If it's a younger defensive guy who has maybe been in a more operational, situation the past couple of years, like Aaron Glenn, Mike McDonald, I think I'm okay with those types of guys because I think they'll be more open-minded to bringing in an offensive staff that let's just be real, have to bring in a staff that's going to advance this offense. But older guys, I am kind of more out on that because they're retreads, and I don't really think that this team needs a retread hire.
Yeah, and for me, Dan Quinn doesn't bother me. He doesn't at all. Mm-hmm. I think he's called one heck of a defense for the Cowboys as of late. That's the reason I actually thought they were going to get over the hump this year with all things that they've done as a team. Offensively, you knew they had their issues. What Dak's going to give you, what their run game is going to look like. Is Tyron Smith going to be there week in and week out? But they've cultivated a lot. I don't necessarily think that they or the team he was the holistic issue that they had this past week. You look at the way Jordan Love played. They put it to them.
He's playing well.
They did put it to him. But I also look and say, what are we asking Dan Quinn to do? Call plays or set up the structure and want this team to be successful? That's where I'm at with how I view some of these dudes. I wouldn't be overly mad at it. I wouldn't be overly mad at Dan Quinn. Again, I do somewhat still think they go defensive. Mm-hmm. You just find a better version of it. Who was it? I mean, Goff was good in L.A., right? Until they went and got a better version of him and Matthew Stafford.
Dan Quinn's not a better coach than Mike Vrabel, though.
Yeah, I ain't saying that, but I'm saying I can understand why they would.
That, to me, is probably 9th or 10th on my list of the 10 that they've interviewed or scheduled to interview.
Yeah.
Him and Brian Johnson are the two. Really, the other 8, you can make an argument for. Antonio Pierce, I think you can take out. He's going to be the head coach in Vegas.
I think so.
Mm-hmm.
I really think you've got 9 candidates among the guys who you have either interviewed or are requesting to interview.
How many serious ones you think they have?
I have no way of knowing, honestly. I mean, until we see who else. The fact that they've only interviewed 5 and they have 5 left, to me, I don't know how you can differentiate them. Because honestly, I would have said Aaron Glenn is at the bottom of that list too, until we heard yesterday from Jeremy Fowler that he's one of the guys in the mix.
Yeah.
Even though he hasn't even been interviewed yet.
Yeah.
By the way, congrats to Terrell Williams, the defensive line coach here for the Titans. We don't know what his future will be. He is on the America team coaches staff for the Senior Bowl. I always wondered, too, like, what is his future trajectory going to be? Because I feel like he could be one of those guys that in the future gets an opportunity. And that's a guy I would love to see be retained on the coaching staff here, but I don't think that's happening because I think he might get a job in terms of like maybe even an assistant somewhere in terms of defense.
Yeah, he'll be fine. I think he's well respected. His opportunity would present itself 100%. I'm not worried about Coach Terrell Williams. Not saying that I'm not worried about him, but it wouldn't shock me if he was retained to be the D-line coach or if he was somewhere else immediately. I mean, Philly would salivate over having a D-line coach like him.
It's weird to see Jeffrey Simmons without him, right?
Yeah.
Yesterday, according to ESPN's Adam Schefter, the Dallas Cowboys announced they will not be making a head coaching change. Mike McCarthy will be back and is the most pre-fired coach maybe of all time in 2025.
I ain't mad at it.
Why?
Because.
You know he's gone after this year.
I know.
Well, then go ahead and do it now.
like Vrabel, maybe he should have been gone last year.
Put the animal down.
I kind of agree with Moan, though, because you're stuck with Dak, too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If you bring a new coach in, it's an all-new offense. They're already winning 12 games a season in the regular season. You might as well just hope for a better role in the playoffs. Because then you can get out from under Dak next year. Hopefully they suck. You have a high draft pick. But ripping the Band-Aid off doesn't do anything but set you back in the near term. And Jerry Jones, apparently, I heard this on the morning show before us on Fox Sports, that he told the team he does not have a lot of time left. So pressure.
He's 81.
Hey, Jerry.
All right, calm down, Daddy. Calm down, Daddy. No, wait till I'm the owner of the Cowboys. We could really do something.
Well, you're his son, so you're going to take over.
You're going to be the owner of the Cowboys, and I'm going to be the king of England.
There we go.
At the same time.
Look at us, man.
Look at that.
Who'd have thought?
And I'm going to be an owner of a team. There we go. Ramon, you're going to be my head
Cowboys
coach.
will be in the
GM.
The Cowboys will be in the
there we
London
go.
game every year as long as I'm ruling.
Yeah,
I'll be a fair and just ruler.
The decision to retain him again. You're firing coaches had, like Bert said, numerous winning seasons. I think they're steady in what they're wanting to do. Jordan Love just came out in the worst possible way he could against the Dallas Cowboys. Why make that change? Take the play calling out of his hands, maybe again, and go that direction with him. But I'm not upset with that.
And there's also probably, if you're Jerry Jones, and look, he doesn't, if you're really trying to be honest, he doesn't look great. Like, I don't know how much time that guy has left. I'm not trying to be mean. I'm trying to be realistic, though, and he eats a lot of Whataburger, and that is not good for you. So anyway, that's besides the point.
It's not good for you. It's great for you.
Grease makes him happy, Caleb.
But in all seriousness, I think also you had to have looked around at what your options are too, because you got to think anybody is going to want to probably take that job if it's available. And he probably looked around too and said, I don't know if it's worth it for what's out there that would be a fit right now to move on from him. So I'm kind of torn on this, but I'm not completely against it.
I think it's the wrong decision.
And it could be.
I think the Eagles are making the right decision by keeping Nick Sirianni.
Both are the same.
No, I don't think so.
Yes, the heck they
Nick Sirianni hasn't failed elsewhere as a head coach before, like Mike McCarthy did with Green Bay.
Nick Sirianni's never won a Super Bowl as a head coach.
He's a younger guy who got his coordinator hires wrong after they both became head coaches. There was one new coordinator in Dallas, but Dan Quinn had been there, And that defense could have given up 50 points if Jordan Love had played all 4 quarters.
Yeah, we've seen this year Cleveland Browns defense get beat by the Houston Texans too.
Well, that
who
doesn't
had
have
the
anything to do
number
with
one team.
Nick Sirianni.
I mean, we're talking about people having a bad game. He had the worst point of the season to have a bad game. We're talking about what Dan Quinn and the Dallas Cowboys did.
Sure, but if you're going to compare what the Browns defense did, that defense was the worst in the NFL away from Cleveland all year.
What is concerning with Nick Sirianni is his team. Clearly, there was a cultural thing that happened inside that locker room. Like that locker room, from everybody I've talked to, and I've got some reporter friends over there, is divided and has been divided for the past.
Have they said why? And
no,
for what
and that's
reasons?
I don't know if Sirianni's a part of it or if it's just specifically players, because obviously A.J. Brown's name gets lumped in there, but they have some sort of a culture issue that's going on right now. That's fine if they retain him, but they have got to figure that out, or else that team is not going to be anything next year. And they're losing a big chunk of players because they're a little bit older.
Can we take notes from this, too, to realize everybody that's having issues are losing teams? Can we all agree to that, too?
What do you mean by that?
As far as, like, everybody's worried about what the Titans do, and the reason we're having side conversation, non-football conversation, because we're losing. The same reason that the Phillies having a bunch of culture issues is because they were losing.
Right.
I don't know if the losing contributed to what the culture was, but it definitely highlights everything that they have going on because they are also losing. Like, losing takes away from the game.
I just think it's interesting that if Nick Sirianni had lost his job, nationally the conversation would have been, oh, thank God. The Eagles are saved, right? He was holding them back. That's the right decision for a guy that's made the playoffs 3 straight years. Yet that's those same people that are going to say that are criticizing the Titans for getting rid of Mike Vrabel, who has not made the playoffs in 2 straight years. There's the feeling that, oh, Philadelphia, those are winners up there. Winning organization.
They do get a pass.
Guess not.
They do get a pass. But on the other side with McCarthy, if he's the one calling the plays, they also had the number 2 overall offense in the NFL.
They did? Yeah, I don't think he's going to give up play calling duties as good as they were on offense this year. That offense wasn't why they lost, other than Dak Prescott turning into playoff Dak Prescott.
So is Dan Quinn off your list?
Yeah, I mean, he was never on my list.
You said he was 9 or 10. Okay, that's right. You already said
he's one of my bottom 2 candidates. And it sounds like he or Vrabel are the 2 of the names to watch in Seattle as well. So it sounds like he's earmarked elsewhere anyway. Coming up next, head coach of Titans Radio. He is Coach Dave McGinnis. What is the biggest difference between a first interview and a second interview to be a head coach of a team in the National Football League? Coach Mack, a man who has been through head coaching interviews and was head coach of the Bears for 6 hours and didn't know it for 3, joins us coming up next. Every Thursday at 7:20 on RKW, brewed up by 8th and Roast. You hear this music and you hear from Titans Radio's head coach. He is Coach Dave McGinnis, brought to you by Two Rivers Ford, Middle Tennessee's most trusted local Ford dealership for 40 years. Coach Mack, what's up?
Hey, well, yeah, I'm glad I've got a Two Rivers Ford because I can get around in this stuff.
Yes, you can.
It's been no problem with me with my Two Rivers Ford, so that's another big advantage for it. I'm very proud of all of you guys having made it in, I think, every day of this week, so major kudos.
Yes, sir. Thank you. We appreciate it. It is better to have your tires on the road versus in Two Rivers also, because those are frozen.
Yeah, and well, the thing is probably at least two of you have enough sense to drive slow. I don't know about Ramon. Ramon has got that vehicle that could go over ditches. I mean, that thing is built up so high and the tires are so big. Ramon should be pulling people out of ditches. Is what he should be doing right now with that vehicle.
Coach Mack, I got inspired when we went to Houston, right? And I saw people that was waiting in traffic drive over barriers, man. That's just how it goes when you got a big truck, Coach Mack. Don't blame me.
And Coach,
I don't blame you.
Coach, you knew I grew up in this.
Oh, I know you.
So
did.
I'm outspeeding any of these guys.
No, and I spent before, and then we'll talk about football here real quick. But I had no idea what this stuff was like until I went to Chicago, and then I figured out I know nothing about driving in this, so I either have to quit driving or learn how to drive in it. So you're right. If you've got experience in it, now some people don't have experience in it, and they're not willing to learn, and those are the people you see doing 360s on the highway.
Coach Mack, you should have seen me as a kid growing up here one year with a leaf blower trying to make 2 tire tracks in our driveway. So I'm right there with you. I will speak as the only non-idiot, I guess, then on the show. Coach Mack, as someone who has been through head coaching interviews in the National Football League, and as we start to hear about callbacks for the Titans on who will get a second interview in person, what is the biggest difference between a first and a second interview as a head coaching candidate in this league?
You know, when I first started being on the interview circuit in the league, first of all, the time frames were different back then because, let's start with this. Staffs were smaller. I mean, it was harder to get into the league on a coaching staff because there's only 6 to 8 coaches on a staff. Okay, so you spent a lot of years trying to work up to get into this league, and then I'd been in the league 9 or 10 years before, I got on that interview circuit. It's different now, and what they used to do in lieu of what I can relate to these Zoom interviews that are going on now, they used to send somebody to you from the league when you were one of the hot candidates, and they would send somebody with a television crew to a hotel or wherever you wanted to set up, and you would do an interview there with someone from the league, and then you'd review the tape, and then they would take that back to the league office, and then they would send it out to all the clubs, and then all the clubs would look at it and then start calling you if they wanted to set up meetings with you. And so that's how it works. So I understand now. I mean, it's a much different process than it was as far as the initials. I mean, you could this way with the Zoom, you can have 10 candidates that you can talk to, and in a very short amount of time. We all learned how to do business over Zoom. All of us, everybody in every industry, during COVID. And so, real business was conducted over Zoom. And so I think that's a different process of it. Now, you're able to work through a lot of candidates, and you can learn a lot about a candidate, and you can learn a lot from them in one of those Zoom interviews. But then you narrow it down as to funnel it down a little bit as to what you really want to glean from someone, and then bring them in face to face, because you're never going to get a job in this league unless you meet somebody face to face. The 3 face-to-face interviews I had were with all different clubs, and different people involved, but they all followed a same pattern of the fact that they wanted to know who you were, and they didn't want you to parrot or just, get up on a board and just start saying things that you thought that they wanted to hear. They wanted to know who you were. So that's what the face-to-face things are about. because you've got to get to know people. It's about people, and it's also about the people that you can bring with you. That was a big thing when I interviewed. They wanted to know, because, you know, I was a young defensive coordinator. They wanted to know who I was going to bring on my staff. And so I spent a lot of time putting that together, and then, you know, having some reasons behind each person as they related to the club that I was interviewing with. And so I learned something from every interview that I went to. I learned something from every interview. And the clubs are trying to learn something from you too. So it's a pretty good process, but you better be prepared. And I know this, that all of these guys now, everybody's got representation now. Everybody's got ways they put together their presentations as to what they're doing. But if you better be genuine and be yourself. And that's the one thing that I learned in the feedback that I got from people. Ramon, the first person that picked me up when I went to New Orleans to interview was Omar Khan. Okay. And that's right back when Omar was just starting. When we were both very young and just starting. We talked about you get to know people in this type of process. And most of these people that you're talking to, if you stay in the league long enough, you'll run into them again.
Coach Mack, that's what's most fascinating about this search that the Titans are having right now is one that you speak about is the age, right? You mentioned Omar Khan, who's now the GM in Pittsburgh, and like you said with Seattle, you run into these same people all the time. So when you have a conversation, right, about some of these prospects that they're looking to hire, like a Aaron Glenn, and you have polls that are put out by the players or other coaches say, yes, this guy's going to be a good coordinator or a head coach at one point in time. Explain to people how tight the circle of coaches in the NFL fraternity is for the people that say, well, that's just the players speaking about that. Like these types of people, whether that be Sean McVay or an Aaron Glenn or Kyle Shanahan, they don't just fall from a tree, Coach Mack. People know these guys have talent on years before they actually get crowned.
Yeah, and again, Ramon, it goes back to, and I've said this before, what Mike Ditka told me when I first went in to interview with him, you know, face-to-face, when I was getting into the league at a very young age. And he gave me some great advice, you know, when he hired me. And it was really quick, and it was really to the point. He said, just remember, every day's an interview. Every day is an interview. So if you look at it like that in the league as a player or as a coach or anybody working in this league, it's a huge enterprise. It's a huge enterprise, and it gets bigger every year. But the circle of people are very small. That's why when I go to the combine, you know, I mean, I know everybody there, but I've been at it a long time. But the circle of people, because the league itself is very successful because people that aren't very good, and I'm just saying this as an honest truth, aren't going to stay in it very long. Either as a player or as a coach, because it's too demanding. It's too demanding. It's too visible. And so the circle, you know, starts to shrink. Even as the enterprises get bigger, that circle still is pretty small.
Coach Mack, the other side of this too is this group of head coaching candidates. Almost all of them are relatively young too. So the question I have for you is, you know, some of these guys 37, 38 years old, and you know, early 40s and whatnot. What are the first head coach challenges that they have to get over, Coach Mack, for the ones that will be hired?
Well, you don't really know. You don't know what you don't know. And a lot of these guys, you know, have started, you know, pretty young in this league. But yeah, as I say, the chances now to come in as a coach are so much more than they were, because you can start out, you know, as a quality control person. If you've got 25 or 28 people on a staff, there's rooms, you know, for these assistants to assistants roles where you can learn on the job training. Used to be there wasn't that. You had to have something to have gotten you into the league back then, because it wasn't, the coaching staffs weren't as big. You know, when I was an 8th coach hired with the Bears, and they'd never had more than 7 for a long time. They only had 9 lockers in the coach's locker room. So the chances of coming in at an earlier age and being able to start to absorb what the league is so much better. And so, you know, your candidacy of people is a bigger, wider swath of people, just because there are more people in it. But you don't really, it doesn't matter your age. You think you know what being a head coach is, but when And I promise you, when you finally get the job and all the hoopla is over with and everybody's celebrated and everybody's feeling good because you're undefeated and there's nothing going wrong, and then that door shuts and you're the only one sitting in that big office, there are times when I think everybody, if you talk to them, and I've talked to a lot of head coaches at a lot of different levels through all the years, we all have had that moment where you're going, what the hell do I do next? Okay, because there's a lot to it. There's a lot to it. There's a whole lot to it. But it still should not, keep anybody from wanting to attain it. And now, everything that's available to people now, there's so much more information available now that but you don't know until you do it, and you can't do it until you get an opportunity. So the biggest thing in all of this that I want to say is you've got to sell yourself as a person. You can have all the great graphs and the presentations and the PowerPoints and whatever you want to put up there. But if you can't sell yourself as a person, as a genuine person that can lead an organization, I'm not just talking about a team in a locker room, I'm talking about an organization, then you're probably not going to be involved.
When you flip that, Coach Mack, and, there's always other openings. Like right now, there are 8 openings in the National Football League for head coaching jobs. Do you at all ever have to sell your franchise to some of these guys that are possibly deciding between 2 or 3 different places? It's a very much a give and take. It really is. And as I say, you can learn. I've been in on coaches' interviews, when I've been in a position at either a head coach or an assistant head coach, for coordinator positions. I've been in on a lot of those interviews, and you can learn a lot about a candidate. All right, you can learn a lot about a candidate just as they are trying to learn about you, because you may think what an organization is, because all the organizations are different, but until you get in there and because it's still a people business. It's still a people business. And so it's absolutely you can, Kayla. And it's very, very important because that's why the Zooms are great. And you can really get a lot of good background off of these Zoom meetings, both ways through the screens. You can get that, but the face-to-face, because it's still a people business and you have to be compatible. You just have to be compatible. Coach, we've talked a lot about, who the next coach is going to be, the staff, but what about the players in this situation? What about the players that are going to be here next year? The leaders and a guy like Jeffrey Simmons, what is it like for them during a time like this where there is so much uncertainty going into next season? How do you kind of stay focused on, okay, whoever comes in, we've got to buy into that culture?
Well, yeah, because you've only got a finite amount of time in this league, both as a coach and a player, but especially as a player, because and so you're going to have to take advantage of whoever is your head coach. You've got to take advantage of that time, and you've got to understand. Players know that you're not going to hire somebody that they think is not going to be good, or is not going to try to advance what you're doing, and that's why it's important, the staff that you bring in, because coaching in this league, I learned this very, very quickly for some great players that I ask, what do you want from me? What do you need from me? Because what do you need from me at this stage in your career, which they were all different, and some of them, were on stretches of Hall of Fame careers. What do you need from me? Just be honest with us, and something that can help us be better, that we can work with and work on, and don't BS us. And so to me, that all players expect that. All players expect that. And most people that are coaching in this league now, you don't get this far in this league unless you've got some of that in you. And when you hear about these coaches, they say, are players coaches, players coaches, players coach. What it really means is someone that is helping them improve. That's what they want. And the other thing that you'll always get from players, from coaches that they trust, is someone that is honest with them. Someone that's honest with them. Because as a player, you're talking to one right there that did it for a lot of years, that came in and had to earn everything that he got. You've got to learn which guys you can trust and which you can't, And that goes both ways, both as a player to a coach and a coach to a player.
Well said.
Coach Mack, one of those players coaches is Lions defensive coordinator Aaron Glenn, who reportedly was asked to interview with the Titans in an NFLPA survey that came out a few weeks ago. He was ranked as the number one coach that players like to play for the most of any coordinator on either side of the ball. What do you remember the most about Aaron Glenn, the player, and what do you hear about him just as a guy who is one of the 10 candidates the Titans have reportedly requested to interview?
Well, clearly, first of all, he's got a lot of water in his bucket, and rightfully so as a player. I mean, and it was a legitimate player for 13 years. 13. You don't last 13 years in this league if you're not genuine. You just don't. You don't, because first of all, you can't last that long in a locker room, and second of all, you can't last that long with coaches. I mean, so you've got to be genuine. And the other thing is he understands how to navigate what the National Football League is. It's a different enterprise than anything else that's going on. It's not the same as the civilian world. It's not. It's just not, because there's a whole lot that goes into it. So someone that has been in it long enough at a high level and has thrived, not only as a player, but now clearly as a coach. And he was willing to start out coaching. I mean, he worked for an indoor league to start with. I mean, he was willing to start out at the bottom and learn. That's always impressed me. That impressed me about Mike Munchak. Mike Munchak is a Hall of Fame player, a great player, great guard. He started out as a quality control coach. He didn't want to come in and start out and say, look, I'm not taking a job unless I'm a coordinator. That's not what he did. That's not what Aaron Glenn did.
Coach Mack joins us every Thursday on RKW. He is presented by our good friends at Two Rivers Ford. Coach Mack, stay warm, stay safe out there, and we'll talk to you again next week.
Ramon, if I need a ride, can I call you?
Coach Mack, I'll just know you need a ride. I'll show up.
In that monster truck, they'll sell you the whole seat, but Coach Mack, you only need the edge.
See you guys. Bye.
See you, Coach.
There's Coach Mack. I love it. I was going to say that earlier. You kind of do drive a monster truck around here sometimes. And
Wait, you didn't drive that in today, did you?
Thursday.
I mean, it's just around. Okay?
Humble Henderson,
I
though.
was
It's just at his
like,
disposal.
who was driving in today? I didn't know who that
drove
was.
the wife's truck in
That's
today.
what I
It needed
thought.
to be driven because the batteries in the cold
Okay.
weather. Yeah.
I was
it
like,
needed
who
to
is
be
this guy
recharged.
being Ubered into the station right now?
I'm the Uber. I'm
Yes.
the designated driver more times than not, but I absolutely enjoy driving.
Real quick, have you guys seen the news on who is singing the national anthem at the Super Bowl?
No.
Me?
It just came out 8 minutes ago. Let's take guesses. Don't look.
Okay. Adele?
No.
Taylor Swift's not known for her voice, right?
Well, no.
Did I lie?
Ramon?
Did I lie? No, she's not.
My
More
girlfriend
so
is
for her
going to tar and
performances.
feather you.
Bring it on, Payton.
She's an entertainer. I think that gets overlooked, her voice sometimes.
The
That's fair.
national anthem singer for the Super Bowl
Lady Gaga.
is coming up next. All right, well, before the break, I pulled a Ryan Seacrest. It's the first time that Will Bowling and Ryan Seacrest have ever been compared. It's RKW brewed up by 8th and Rose. The national anthem singer for the Super Bowl will be one of the big inflatable mascots that races around Nashville Sounds games. Reba McEntire will be singing the national anthem in Vegas. Post Malone will be doing America the Beautiful.
That's cool.
I'm very excited about that. That's the real headline
You
here.
talk about
my favorite
guy
singer of all time.
That's changed his entire outlook and just everything about him is Post Malone.
I love him so much.
Talk
I really
about
do.
this banger that introduced us here.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Who is it? Who is it, Ramon? It's a
Zombie.
type of juice.
Cranberries.
What are you
There,
talking?
there you
Cranberries.
go.
It's the
Hold
Cranberries.
on, what
The
did
name
I
of the
miss?
group. Zombie.
What happened?
This was the intro.
It was the song that Robert was bringing us back to.
I ain't even hear that song.
This
I
is
was-
the bridge right here.
No, I probably have.
It's in The Office. It's one of the songs that Andy sings in The Office when he does the zombie.
Oh, but I didn't.
You'll recognize it in a
no,
second.
I do recognize it,
Okay.
but I wasn't hearing it in the moment because I was trying to figure out who was singing it.
You're listening to me. Thank you.
Ready?
It sounds so sad.
I mean, it's not
A banger.
It's just.
It's just a zombie. Yeah.
Yeah,
Banger.
sure. When you think of it like that, yeah, maybe it is sad. But like, so is like Long December by the Counting Crows. But I love that song too.
Oh, that's a great
If y'all
song.
aren't careful, I'm going to make Robert replay the Tony Soprano singing "I Will Do Your Dirty Work" by Stevie.
And I love that song too.
Do the County Crows? Are they at every town?
Not the County Crows. It is
I love it.
Counting Crows.
The what?
It is not the crows from
County Crows. Hey, if you want to get a building permit, you're going to have to go down the road and see the County Crows. Hey, you want to apply for a
Tennessee
loan?
County
You want to
Crows.
apply for a loan before you come to the bank? Go see the County Crows. They're down the road. You take a left on Main Street. You go to the second light. You go past where you see the exit sign, and then that's where the County Crows live.
Call now.
I love
555-555. 1, 2, 3.
Y'all know I'm
County
not.
Crows.
Y'all know I'm dead serious. I thought you said.
Who's running for County Crow re-election this upcoming
God, that's
cycle?
great.
By the County Crows is what I thought because I can see that being a group because the crows around the county square.
Musical guest.
County Crows.
With guest host Reba McEntire and musical guest County Crows.
Wait till I
and
pump us
Bobby
back with some
Moynihan.
County Crows.
Vanessa Bayer.
Maybe that's the representation of the people that never leave their hometown.
Fred
Hey, around the
Armisen.
county
not?
square.
I keep thinking about
look 'em up,
the
too.
crows
For
from
God's sakes.
Dumbledore. Or not Dumbledore, Dumbo. God, now I'm messed up. Yeah, whatever. Let's talk about sports.
Oh,
Whatever.
gosh.
The County Crows
Love it.
might be a group. The Counting
Counting
Crows. So guess what Google said? Showing results for the Counting Crows. Did you mean Counting Crows? Oh my God.
Yes,
You got it.
I,
Pretty,
oh.
they're a
This is
good group.
Also how I feel
Are
when
they?
anyone on this show or any other show says Dolphins coach Mike McDaniels.
Oh my God.
There's no S.
McDaniel.
There's no S.
Ah, it's like
McDaniel.
D'Amico Ryan. Some say
That one has
D'Amico
an S.
Ryan. It's like it's S.
I do that with Christian Wilkins, but I call him
Yes.
Christian Wilkinson.
Yeah.
Like he's
That would
not-
be his son.
Yeah, right.
That's Christian
Yes.
Wilkins' son.
We're all a little bit
Anyway,
imperfect.
Dane Brugler, the Athletic,
Okay.
his second mock draft, not only makes a good pick for the Titans, but he also praises a current Titan. This was interesting. In the Athletic, we had this on our list yesterday before the Aaron Glenn stuff came down, and we pivoted just a bit. Dane Brugler, number 7 overall, has the Tennessee Titans taking Joe Alt, left tackle, Notre Dame. And in his description of why, he had the shortest description for the Titans of anyone in the top 10. Not because he didn't want to talk about the Titans, because it was a pretty simple explanation. He said, Alt and Skoronski kicking butt on the left side of the Titans line for the next decade is an easy pitch to make. I have nothing else to add. That's praise for
Yep,
Peter
cut and
Skoronski,
dry.
who in this market was not getting a lot of praise by many who wanted to compare him to Chance Warmack.
And by the way, Dane Brugler releases The Beast yearly.
Yes, he does.
And it's a full breakdown of all things scouting as far as almost all the prospects that are entering the NFL draft. So he knows what he's looking at as far as evaluation and breaking down. But him saying that again, do you still have that pulled up, Will? What he said
don't,
about
but
the
I
left
can.
side? because that's what my dream has been for this team.
Alt and Skoronski kicking butt on the left side of the Titans' offensive line for the next decade is an easy pitch to make, he says. And for anyone who's saying, oh, well, he's not going to be there at 7. Like, what are you talking about? Guys, it's January the 18th.
Right.
There is no way to know who is going to get picked where.
Yeah. By the way, that beast, if you want winter reading in a week like this, and we'll probably get more still later on, that's the one to cuddle up with and just read it because it's thick.
It'll come out in the spring, though.
Mm-hmm.
It's spring, right before the draft?
It's more like March.
Is it March?
Comes out.
Right after free agency.
I consider March spring.
Do
That's
you?
just me.
Here?
I do.
I guess it is, technically.
March 1st is spring to me.
March 1st? Nah, you ain't been to baseball tournaments in March, have you?
True.
Well, it's still wintertime, Will.
The first time you turn on AC is always going to the SEC tournament. When I would do the drive home for spring break from Knoxville to go to the SEC tournament, that was always when I would turn on the AC or like roll down my windows for the first time.
Oh, because
anyway.
spring practice also had me in long sleeves and stuff, in practice only.
Coming up in his interview with Bussin' with the Boys a couple of days ago, Titans running back Derrick Henry spoke about a different vibe inside the Titans locker room that he and Kevin Byard said they noticed when they reported for camp at the very beginning of the season on a changing culture at Ascension St. Thomas Sports Park. No better person to speak to that than King Henry. We'll hear him next.
Hey, well, you can make the right decision now to get long-lasting relief from that awful joint pain and feel good in 2024. Don't go another year compromising because of that pain in your knees, maybe your back or shoulder. Call QC Kinetics now. QC Kinetics is the nation's leader in regenerative non-surgical pain relief, and really your body has what it needs to restore and repair that damaged joint tissue. QC Kinetics can make it happen with no drugs, no surgery, and no downtime. This is not a Band-Aid. This is a revolutionary treatment that can get you moving again, and we all want that, maybe to play with your kids or your nieces and nephews, or just go around and do the things you like to do in life. Get your life back, and listen, it's non-surgical. Did I mention that? If this is the year you decide to fight back against that pain, take the first step now and call QC Kinetics. Get a free consultation on the calendar today. It's simple. Call them at 615-249-4024. QC Kinetics at 615-249-4024.
What's going on? Just about 8 o'clock from the 104.5 The Zone studios. I'm Robert Walsh. Two coaches who are believed to be on the hot seat will seemingly be coaching in 2024. Jerry Jones put out a statement yesterday reiterating his fact in Mike McCarthy. The Cowboys have gone 12-5 each of the past 3 seasons and had the NFL's #1 scoring offense in 2023 under McCarthy, who was calling plays. Also in the NFC East, Nick Sirianni met with owner Jeffrey Lurie and is expected to have a plan for how he will improve the Eagles this offseason. This pitch will include a potential new coordinators and assistant coaches. In the Titans coaching search, the Titans wrapped up a virtual interview with Dan Quinn, have contacted Bengals offensive coordinator Brian Callahan to schedule a second and in-person interview for their head coaching position. Callahan did a virtual interview last week. In-person interviews can't happen until next week. Titans still wrapping up virtuals this week. Divisional round this weekend rapidly approaching, and the Ravens are getting healthier at the right time. Mark Andrews, who was injured in a November 16th game against the Bengals, practiced fully yesterday, even though he has not been activated to the active roster. The Ravens still have 2 open roster spots. One was taken today after the elevation of Dalvin Cook. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and the Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
A.M. in Nashville as the show goes on a Thursday morning edition of RKW. We are brewed up by 8th and Roast, and coming up in 20 minutes, we'll get a great breakdown of Titans head coaching candidate and Detroit Lions defensive coordinator Aaron Glenn from AtoZ sports reporter Mike Payton, who wrote about this just over a week ago and thinks that between the two Lions coordinators, Aaron Glenn might be the better candidate for a head coaching position. Interesting stuff that we will get into in 20 minutes. In hour number 4, the Thursday 3 previews the football weekend in the divisional round. And essentially, with the amount of picks we have to make, the amount of games we have, it'll just be a preview of your entire NFL football weekend.
There you go.
Yay.
With Ramon Foster and Kayla Anderson, I'm Will Bowling. 615-737-1045 is our number. I just walked outside with only a long-sleeved shirt on. And I'm going to need the next segment just to maybe just sit here and warm up again.
We
better not get sick tomorrow then, because that cold air going right to your lungs.
I already got my sickness out of the way for the year. I'll be good.
Immune is
No,
built
seriously.
up now.
It's always just the temperature change for me.
Well, it's supposed to go back up to like 60s next week. I am worried about that because that's the kind of fluctuation that does make you sick.
I'm good with those. It's when it goes hot to cold for me. If it goes cold to hot, I just get happier and I feel better.
Very specific.
I'd rather it be 100 than 30 every single time.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Well, 100 than 20. 30's not that bad.
Yeah. 30's not that bad. Yeah. When we get to the teams and the wind chill is saying, or what it actually feels like is in single digits, that's when it's become problematic. But,
Correct.
Hey, it is what it is.
So, Derrick Henry on Bussin' with the Boys. There is a lot in this interview. And honestly, you'll probably hear us break down one piece of it a day for a hot minute because there's about an hour of Derrick talking with Will Compton and Taylor Lewan. Wherever you download podcasts, it's a good interview and an insightful conversation. I think this is interesting, guys. When Derrick Henry talks about knowing the culture and the vibe inside the locker room was different, made the point that him and Kevin Byard talked about it pretty immediately once the season began.
But I think picking back off that, saying when I got hurt, I still think we were pretty solid, and with, this year, one thing I would say is like in years past, when shit hit the fan, even when you were there, you can look to your left or your right, and when the pressure comes, the person to your left or right is going to respond. Mm-hmm. And if you need to lean on them, you can lean on them by being in those situations with them before. And this year, like you said, when you came to the facility, it just didn't, it kind of felt like out of place. And whenever I came back for OTAs earlier last year, I was talking to KB. We both kind of felt the same way. It was like, it just felt different.
Mm.
You know, when we used to come back, it was kind of like that home feeling. Like the old line was all together. Everybody knew everybody, and everybody was like, we was all family. But it was just different this year because you had a lot of young guys, and you know, this year was like the first time I was like, it felt like they're taking a shift.
Yeah,
I don't know when it's gonna happen, but you can just feel it at some point. They're gonna shift.
That was Derrick Henry with Will Compton and Taylor Lewan on Bussin' with the Boys.
That's a personnel thing. I mean, when you have new faces and you've got guys that you've let go or you've moved on from certain situations because you couldn't pay them, this is what's going to happen. And you can talk about this more than I can. I'm just speaking as a reporter in the room. I can say that there was a shift. I mean, when you're having to go and learn all these new lockers and where guys are because you're not used to the norm, and that offensive line, the whole room completely changed for the most part. You didn't have Ben Jones. You didn't have Taylor Lewan, those staple guys. So even in the cornerbacks room, when you had guys like Logan Ryan and you had still even Kevin Byard, but when he left, it's almost like that whole room was new for the most part. So I get what he's saying there, and he's saying you look to the left or the right, you don't really know much about these guys. You haven't played a lot of football with them. This team changed because the roster changed.
It did. And I think the level of play changed too. It's also what Derrick was saying. One of the things that was very unique in what Derrick had to say about Taylor being there and that group of being and Nate he brought up and Roger that was there is when Derrick had those runs that he would run into darkness, he said Taylor would come over, hey, Derrick, how about you hit this lane over here? Because the respect factor was there, because they had a bunch of emotional, sides with each other, just emotional feels with each other to where we can have those conversations. When you lose those veterans, when you lose your guys, the play changes somewhat. The expectations change somewhat. You come to guys, man, that are, and they said this on the podcast, when you got a very young team, those dudes are trying to figure out how to survive. And that's essentially what it was. I didn't feel comfortable until 4 years into the league. Because after 4 years, I got my deal. And once I got my deal, I can breathe now. You're so much into survival mode, into trying to figure out what the NFL is, to where you're getting your butt kicked probably day in and day out in practice, and then you got to go to a game and you're losing there also, to where Derrick's acknowledging, like, we just weren't a good team. That's essentially what he's saying, with just saying we're young. It was so many different changes in the transition into this youth movement that you need somewhat, but there was not enough veteran dudes that you've had around that can comfort you into knowing how to get out of games. To me, that is by far that's the biggest hurdle, I think, in games, is when it's tight, when you're down by 10 points, how do you navigate, knowing how to navigate a comeback with the group of guys like Taylor, like Ben, like Roger? Oh, we got this. It was probably never in their mind that they couldn't win games, right?
Right.
But when you got, and I'm looking at the list right now, respectfully, you got Jalen Duncan, Peter Skoronski, Aaron was here, Daniel Bronskill, and Dylan Radins. As the dudes that's supposed to help you churn out yards, when you don't know what these dudes have been made of, or they have been in that Fox Den with you, right?
Yeah.
That's hard living. That ages you a lot too.
Did you expect more development though with these guys throughout the season? Do you think that could have been better, Ramon? And that goes back to coaching as a whole. Then look at the coaching situation. Do you put that all on Vrabel then, because this was such a team with new faces everywhere?
No, I didn't have that. I thought talent would show up. I thought, of course, seeing Peter where he was at times would show up. I thought Brewer, being as tough as he is and been around the longest, would show up. But to be honest with you, can't expect a whole lot out of a young team. As much as we bragged about Joe Burrow when he jumped onto the scene finally, and even this year, C.J. Stroud, look at both sides of the offensive line or the people that keep positions for them. They're veteran dudes. They just are. The linebackers are veteran dudes in Houston, right? Their O-line is very much established in Houston, right? You look at Jacksonville, though, too. They end up losing a tackle to free agency to Kansas City. Other dudes have been depleted. They got a young interior core around them, too. The defense is solid. But what Trevor Lawrence did this year is a bunch of newness. Finally got his wide receiver back in the fold. So that's what Derrick's saying. Like, there is no experience, like actually in-game experience, and they felt that.
I think the difficult part of that, too, is that we spoke about it in training camp. The lineman we felt best about was the one that had never played an NFL game in Peter Skoronski. And all of these rebuilt offensive lines at least had one holdover veteran leader who had been there and done it before. So you think about, all right, how could the Titans have avoided having this level of turnover? Look at their line last year at the beginning of the season. Lawan ain't coming back. Lawan, you just heard hosting the podcast, so obviously that's not an option. Nate Davis got paid a lot more money to go somewhere else and probably got paid more than what he really was worth. So, number-wise, did you make the right decision letting him walk? Probably. But in this league, sometimes you just have to overpay for players. And you have to offset value of, hey, I'm going to take less value here for more money and try to hope that somebody else makes up for that by paying them less elsewhere in the roster. Okay, Ben Jones at center. You didn't bring him back. Well, nobody else picked him up. So did you make the right decision there? Mm-hmm. Probably. Aaron Brewer's a guy you kicked inside to play his more natural position. You gambled on the fact that he was your leader who could step up, grow into more of a leadership role, and he may have been more of a leader. He's just not great at playing the position that he played. So, again, you gambled there. You tried to make the right decision and came up empty. And then you had a veteran in Chris Hubbard who was on the street until, the week before the first game was?
Yeah.
And you wanted Nicholas Petit-Frere to step in year two into a leadership role. So I make this breakdown of the offensive line specifically to say, how could this have been avoided? Or was this a product of what Derrick Henry's talking about of, hey, you're paying a running back, you're paying a quarterback, you're still paying Julio Jones, you're still paying a lot of guys, a lot of money, you're still paying Kevin Byard at that point. Is what Derrick Henry's talking about avoidable, or was this a product of bad contracts and you just kind of had to eat it for a year?
It's a product of bad contracts.
Yeah. Well, and drafting.
Yeah.
And drafting.
Yeah. Well, the guys that you needed a lot out of, you haven't really gotten it, except for this year, if we're going to be honest about it, right? That's what we're talking about is these trailing. You still hadn't gotten much out of them. And it would be a big year for him to have a nice year because at some point, the reality of him being a young guy doesn't fit the mold anymore when there's other people at your position doing similar things at a higher rate than you. You know what I'm saying? And of course, MPF getting injured, that sucks. But of course, what if he has a better foundation on him if he doesn't have the suspension? These are all the things that have happened, and that's why when we talk about where this team is at and how you built up some of it last year, I think you're in a better spot than you have been. Because, again, these younger guys that played a lot this year become more veteran, right? They become more seasoned. Sure. You have a home feel. I'd almost guess that Colton Dowell will still be here once he recovers from the ACL.
Oh, yeah.
You got a bunch of these dudes that are coming in. I think, of course, looking at Arden and what he can provide, coming back to expectation and what happened with all the losing this year, the mindset has to change. But, yes, the contracts played a huge part into this, but also the drafting. This dynamic changed fast for this team. I mean, you lost 4 of your 5 dudes from last year. Dylan Radins wasn't a penciled-in starter last year. They essentially reshipped and shaped this team and got somewhat of a decent turnout. Just being honest, you were in the games. You just realized that you're super young. You don't have a whole lot of experience. And your style of ball did not equate to what your talent said it could do.
615-737-1045 is our number. Coming up next, we get the breakdown on a Titans candidate for head coach, defensive coordinator of the Detroit Lions, Aaron Glenn. Mike Payton is an AtoZ sports beat writer covering the Detroit Lions, and he will join us to break down one of the 10 candidates for the Titans next. Hey, what's going on? It's Will Bowling here for my friends at Lee Company. Look, you deserve all the comforts of home, including endless hot water at your fingertips. It sounds pretty nice when it's -1 degrees outside, right? Well, tankless water heaters powered by new recirculation systems save energy, money, time, and space. At Lee Company, They've got a limited time offer of $750 off a tankless water heater when you purchase a recirculation system. And to make the heater even sweeter, qualified buyers, you're going to receive 18 months of 0% financing. You've got to take advantage of this offer today. Call my friends at Lead Company at 615-567-1000 or go to leadcompany.com/promotions to get $750 off a tankless water heater today. That's 18 months of 0% financing for qualified buyers. Remember this number, 615-567-1000, online at leadcompany.com. That's Lead Company, all you need.
What's going
Life is busy. We could all use some extra time in our day, which is exactly why Two Rivers Ford offers mobile service. We'll bring the service to your driveway at no additional charge. Oil changes, brakes, batteries, the certified technicians at Two Rivers will perform basic maintenance on your vehicle wherever you are, so you'll have more time for moments like this. Schedule your mobile service appointment by scanning the QR code or calling Two Rivers Ford today.
Rolling right along in hour number 3 on RKW, brewed by 8th and Rose. Tremone Foster, Kayla Anderson, Will Bowling with you, streaming live on 104.5 The Zone TV. And we are pleased to be joined by AtoZ Sports Detroit Lions beat writer Mike Payton as we break down one of the leading candidates for the Titans job in Lions defensive coordinator Aaron Glenn. What's going on, Mike? How are you?
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me. It's been a while since I've heard that Tennessee accent, and I used to live out there a long time ago. It's nice to feel that again, I guess.
Absolutely. Love it. Mike, let's start with the NFLPA survey and why Aaron Glenn is seen as one of the biggest and best players coaches in the NFL. And 1,600 NFLPA players and voters gave him the highest rank of any coordinator in football. What do you see on a day-to-day basis from him, and why do you think players enjoy playing for him so much?
You know, I think that everybody wants to find the next Dan Campbell, and I think that next Dan Campbell is the Lions defensive coordinator. I mean, that's really the big thing, is that when this team needed to build a culture and this team needed to install everything that this Lions team built up, Aaron Glenn was a huge part of that. And I think everybody focuses so much on what the statistics say, and to a point I get that. But what you really want to do is have a guy that can build a roster, who can hire the right people, who can come in and change the culture and the perception and all of that stuff. And I just think Aaron Glenn is that guy. I know a lot of people are looking at Ben Johnson, but I don't see Ben Johnson doing that. I do see Aaron Glenn doing that. And everything that we've heard from players and former teammates is that he's a leader. He's a leader of men. He'll come in and you will fall in love with him.
Mike Payton, AtoZ Sports, Detroit Lions reporter with us. And Mike, it's interesting you bring up Ben Johnson too, obviously, because here you obviously always overcorrect to the opposite of what you just had. And Mike Vrabel, and the term leader of men was used so much since he was hired and started the gig in 2018 that fans are hesitant to buy into that again here. But what makes Aaron Glenn so different from Ben Johnson? If you could just speak to that and why you think maybe out of the two coordinators, Ben Johnson, even though he's kind of the hotter offensive candidate, might not be the best candidate out of the two.
Well, you know, I think that the NFL is a few years ago, it sort of moved towards this, let's hire these offensive gurus. Let's hire analytic-minded guys like Brandon Staley and Kyle Shanahan. Like, everybody wants to find the next Kyle Shanahan, essentially. And what's happening is that these guys are coming in, and they're having a hard time getting players to believe in them because, you know, these guys aren't, you know, necessarily – and I'm not putting Ben Johnson in this situation saying he's not a leader. But what I will say is that he doesn't have the mind of a former player like Aaron Glenn does. And I don't know yet if Ben Johnson can install a culture, can get everyone to listen to him just based off of his analytic mind and his offensive play calling. And I think that the NFL is going to start moving away from that because a lot of those guys are getting fired. You know, they're all starting over again and trying to find something new. Is it an offensive mind guy, or should we go to defense now, or should we be looking at guys like Dan Campbell or Antonio Pierce, just guys that aren't geniuses or anything like that, but know how to install things, know how the game is played, have that advantage from a player standpoint and a former player standpoint, I should say. And Aaron Glenn has that, and I think that's just invaluable.
Mike Payton of AtoZ Sports Detroit is with us this morning. Mike, thanks for joining us, man, to discuss this coaching search, man. With that being said, of course, the conversation is going to be you go from a defensive coach to a defensive coach if Aaron Glenn is hired here as a head coach. And of course, people start looking at the stats and numbers and games and, you know, places he's been at. What do you say for the folks that judge Detroit's scoring ranking or yards given up compared to you saying he's going to be a great coach?
I think you got to look at the personnel. I mean, if you just take that into account, that this is the second youngest defense in the entire NFL, and this is mostly a bunch of guys on their rookie deal, or they're either spare parts from other teams, guys like, you know, Benito Jones, who kind of bounced around and then found a home here, or John Kaminsky, who, spent time in Atlanta and some other places, but couldn't quite figure it out until he got here. Like, I look at that and I see Aaron Glenn working up a personnel that is so inexperienced and not very high in the talent department, and they've got him from the worst defense in the league last year to 20th. I mean, that's not a huge jump, but we're talking about possibly the worst defense this franchise has ever had last year to here we are, we're going into the divisional round, and this defense is much improved, and they're doing what they have to do. They're doing a little kind of a rope-a-dope thing right now where they're letting teams beat them up through the air, but they're only allowing 16% conversion rate in the red zone right now in the last 3 games. Like, that's what you're going to get. You're going to get a guy who's going to train these players to believe in the moment more than they believe in the playbook. Like, they're going to try as hard as they can. They're going to work their tail off for this guy.
So when you also look at how Detroit's built it, by the way, I think this show has been on the forefront of being somewhat Team Detroit and how Dan Campbell has kind of brought that team up from the inside out. What do you say about you guys' pathway to becoming relevant now and playing into the divisional round, having a quarterback that was pretty much thrown to the wolves in golf? And what does that mean for a guy like Aaron Glenn to be able to see that and take it to another city?
Look, I mean, I think I keep bringing up the word culture, but like that is really what this is. This was a team that Matt Patricia had driven into the ground. I mean, like it seemed like I compare Matt Patricia to Thanos. Like, he came in, he snapped his fingers, and like half the players that you loved were gone, and the fans were in just total distress. And they were able to come in and in short order turn this team from one of the worst teams in the league that nobody wanted to play for, a laughingstock, to a team that is knocking on the door of something huge and maybe a place that free agents are going to be looking to play for coming, starting next year. And I know guys like C.J. Gardner-Johnson came here last year, and they were able to pull some bigger names. But suddenly Detroit is looking like a team that is not just built to win a couple of games. They're built to win some championships and maybe sustain that success over the course of however long, so it's huge difference. And I think that whatever team takes on Aaron Glenn is going to also take that on themselves.
There we go. Lions beat writer for AtoZ Sports Detroit, Mike Payton, joining us now. Mike, here is the picture, though, I'm going to paint for you in Tennessee. So this offense has been anemic. And I think what fans are worried about with just a title of defensive coordinator is who the heck is going to be brought in here then if Aaron Glenn is the head coach and this offense is needing a change. Do you feel comfortable that his Rolodex is that deep, or that he has guys that he could, have on his speed dial that could come in and really coordinate together to make this team better, not just as a whole, but offensively specific?
Yeah, I think that, just much like Dan Campbell with just being a former player and being part of that Sean Payton coaching tree, I think he'll definitely have some ideas on who he could bring. One guy that comes to mind is Saints quarterbacks coach Ronald Curry, who has kind of been working his way up the coaching ladder for a while now, and I think offensive coordinator is probably the next job for him. They were obviously together in New Orleans. I would not be shocked to see him either wind up on the Detroit coaching staff next year, or if Ben Johnson leaves, or maybe wherever Aaron Glenn goes. So, yeah, I think there's some guys there that I'm sure he would love to take. I'm sure he would probably take some guys off the Lions coaching staff as well, which is kind of built for a succession plan right now. So, yeah, I definitely think being in the league for almost 30 years, he should have a lot of names in his speed dial.
You brought up Ben Johnson a couple times. Obviously, the offensive coordinator there, a hot name on the market. Why do you think that he has kind of drummed up so much attention for obviously the offensive mind he is? But I think it's interesting that you say it might not, transfer in terms of a leader of men or a head coach. Like, kind of take me through that, why he might not be altogether, at least right now, good for a head coach.
I guess for me it's just Ben's never been a head coach before, and he's been an offensive coordinator for 2 years. Otherwise, he's kind of worked his way up, tight ends coach, and spent some time in Miami as an assistant and quality control guy. And I just, and again, I'm not trying to take a shot at Ben Johnson.
No,
great offensive coordinator. I just don't see what I see with Glenn, or I see him as more a part of the Lions coaching staff than I do as a guy who separates himself from that and is a leader. And I just wonder, again, like with everyone trying to find the next Kyle Shanahan, are they committing too hard to coaches that are not able to command a room? And I just don't know if Ben can do that. I haven't seen it. And I would love to see it. And if he goes somewhere, I would love to see him have success. But right now, I just don't know. But obviously, the big thing that you would want is what he did with Jared Goff. And Jared Goff was a guy who came over to Detroit, was just supposed to be just a bridge guy, part of the deal. Just take Jared Goff, and we'll give you these 2 first-round picks and all that, and he'll just be here for a year or so. And he's built him into, I would say a top 10, top 15 quarterback in the NFL right now. He's at the top of the league in every major statistical category, and that's obviously not going unnoticed. And you would hope that maybe if Ben could come to Tennessee, he could do something like that with Levis or Malik Willis or maybe even Ryan Tannehill.
Mike Payton, AtoZ Sports, Detroit Lions beat writer, our guest. Mike, speaking about what coaches can learn from Dan Campbell, let's go to the flip side with Brad Holmes and what he's been able to do as the general manager up there in Detroit. For a guy in Rand Carthon here in Nashville who just finished his first year as general manager, what can an organization like the Titans learn from the way Brad Holmes in Detroit has built this thing there? What are other organizations looking at in the job he's done in the front office as you think is the biggest success story?
Yeah, I think it's a couple of things. I think the first thing is you've got to go and find the guys that fit your identity. You have to get that identity in and then draft only guys that are going to fit what it is that you want to do. And then also, if you're going to draft somebody, I hope you can't hear that squeaking. My dog's going crazy.
Oh, you're good. we are a pro dog show on this radio show. You've come to the right place.
Obviously, when they draft players, they're looking for players that are going to fit their identity, and they're going to use those players for what they're successful in. And then the other thing is, don't be afraid to go get your guy. I think so many teams have kind of adhered to this whole positional value thing and Brad Holmes has thrown out the window. Obviously, he drafts Jameer Gibbs last year, Jack Campbell, Sam Laporta. All these picks were kind of looked at as he was being crazy. Like, how could you draft these guys so high? And now here they are. They're 3 of the best rookies in the NFL. So go get your guy. Don't let everybody else dictate to you where you should draft someone. If you love them, go get them.
Is there a situation in which you see a guy like Aaron Glenn just ultimately wanting or not wanting to collaborate and build up? Like, what's the culture with Dan Campbell and his coaches? That's been one of the biggest things that we've heard down here is they want to make sure they have a hierarchy and how the GM, the head coach, the owner deliver themselves. How has that structure been inside the Detroit Lions building?
Well, it's, Dan Campbell, after Sunday's win over the Rams, was in the locker room, and he was giving the game ball to Brad Holmes, and he was talking about how they were in lockstep. And I think that's what you got to do. I mean, hierarchy is cool and fun and all that, but here in Detroit, Dan Campbell, Brad Holmes, and even the owner, Sheila Hamp, are constantly working together to try to make this team a success. And I think that, when you have that chemistry and you're able to find the players that you're looking for and you can all agree on one thing, like it's again, that's super invaluable. And it's a huge reason why the Lions have started to accomplish success.
Mike Payton of AtoZ Sports with the Lions, beat writer for them, joins us now on RKW. Just in general, we've got the playoffs happening this weekend, Mike, and incredible first playoff win since 1991. I think a lot of people are enjoying this Detroit Lions team, even if they're not big fans of it. if they do lose, an offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, how sustainable do you feel like this success is for this Lions organization?
I think it's relatively sustainable. What they're not losing is Dan Campbell or Brad Holmes or really any of the players. I mean, most of these guys are going to be locked around for a while now. But what the Lions have done, or what we believe they've done, is built a succession plan. Even Ben Johnson was part of a succession plan to get to offensive coordinator. They had Anthony Lynn in this job in 2021, and after they let him go, they didn't even look outside. They just moved Ben right up. And I think that they have some guys like Tanner Engstrom, maybe Mark Brunell, Scotty Montgomery. Those guys could certainly be promoted to offensive coordinator. Kelvin Shepard, who I want to say played for the Titans, but I'm not 100% sure. He could be moved to DC. So there's definitely a succession plan in effect. So it will be interesting to see how things change. But I think that what they want to do is going to be instilled in whoever takes those jobs.
Mike, you want to know why real quick, while we're Detroit fans from the down south?
Yeah, I do.
Hendon Hooker,
That's
Jalen
right.
Reeves-Maybin, and Cam Sutton. Go Vols, man.
Jalen Reeves-Maybin, the pride of Clarksville, Tennessee, right up the road. That's right.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Great dudes, though, man. Every single one of them fellas, man, by the way.
No, they're very, very great guys, and especially Cam. He's incredible.
Is he still that player coach? So we played together in Pittsburgh, and from the time he got in, it's two things we notice about him. He never gets tired during the conditioning test to open up camp. Never. He would sprint the conditioning test and would not even breathe, and he was always known as a player's coach. Has that held true?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he's not like – it's an interesting thing because he's not the most vocal leader in the world, but he's like a guy that you just know that everyone's following. Like he just has that about him, that aura, that atmosphere, or whatever you might call it. Like it's just, you look at Cam and you just know he's a leader. And then Reeves-Maybin as well, like one of the best special team players I think I've ever seen. Like he is incredible.
Yeah.
Mike, real quick before we let you go, what's your dog's name? Who is your co-host with you this morning?
Well, I have two dogs, Ziggy and Ruby. Ruby's the one who enjoys the squeaker.
Yep.
Nice.
Can't go wrong with the little squeaky toys.
Ruby and Mike joining us from Detroit this morning at AtoZ _Payton, where you can find him, Payton, covering Detroit. Mike, really appreciate the insight. Great stuff. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Absolutely, guys. Thanks for having me.
Thanks.
All right, there he is. Mike Payton, AtoZ Sports, giving us a little bit of insight on a top Titans candidate who he says could be the next Dan Campbell, which talk about copycat league, replicating things that are working. I would say that is certainly a good one to replicate. Mm-hmm. We'll dive into what he had to say, react to that, catch up on your phone calls at 615-737-1045 as we wrap up Hour 3 next. RKW is brewed by 8th and Roast on 104.5 The Zone. And coming up in hour 4, we will give you our preview of the divisional round and our picks against the spread. Thursday 3 coming up at 9:20. 615-737-1045. I'll catch you up on headlines around the league and here locally where callbacks have begun for the main role of head coach. It's all the drama at the lunch table at school. Let's go to Alvin in Nashville on the phone line. He's been waiting patiently to chime in on the Titan search. What's up, Alvin? How are you?
Good morning, Alvin.
Hey, good morning. Good morning. How y'all doing, ladies and gentlemen?
We are great.
Hey, I'm here on a coaching session, but I just want to go back to a topic that y'all had just talked about. I don't know if y'all remember, but the time I think the Titans went downhill with the John Robinson and all this era and all that stuff, you remember that when Jack Conklin, we supposed to sign him, or, you know, if we sign him, we ain't going to be able to sign AJ, you know. I really think they should have signed Jack Conklin because you didn't even sign AJ. And that's when we got Isaiah Wilson messed up with that first-round pick. So, you know, that's the bigger deal. Like, you weren't going to sign AJ, you should have signed Jack Conklin. You didn't have to worry about Isaiah Wilson. You could have got a receiver then, you know. Yeah. But there's no here nor there. But I was going to talk about the head coach thing. I honestly feel, you know, I understand bringing in a defensive.
You went blank on us.
Alvin, we lost you for a second. Sorry, go ahead.
You said, I understand.
Okay. Yeah, the guy out of Houston, the offensive coordinator.
Bobby
The
Slowick.
reason why I say, yes, man. The reason why I say I think we should go with him because, you know, if you look at Sean McVay, Shanahan, they call plays. The reason why I say that is because if you look at the Titans with Mike Vrabel, what was our problem? Okay, offensive coordinators get hired here and there. So we got to get a new offensive coordinator here. If you have a guy that's already there, that's the head coach calling plays, if we lose the defensive coordinator, it's much easier. But, you know, with having leverage at quarterback, that's going to give him that, you know, it's going to set him back. If we go, okay, we got a new offensive coordinator, you know, he might want to bring in his own system, you know, things like that. So, as far as my pick, I say the guy from Houston, and let's bring in Ramon's old offensive coordinator, Mike Munchak, to run that offensive line. That's my pick. But I'll just hang up and listen. Y'all have a good holiday.
Thank you, Alvin.
Absolutely, Alvin.
Appreciate it.
I think that's the fear of a lot of people who think they hear defense, right? Defensive coordinator, and the first thing they think of is, okay, even if they get in a good offensive coordinator, they could lose that offensive coordinator after a year, like Matt LaFleur in this incident. And because they're so behind in terms of this offense, I understand the concern with that. If you do get a defensive coordinator in that can be the head coach, that can be a leader of men, all that kind of stuff that comes along with it, like Mike Payton that just joined us in the last hour said, it is very important then that you have a succession plan, right? That you have the right guys in this offense in other positions that could possibly step up to be that OC. And that's easier said than done sometimes. And I think we've seen it with this team. They've got burned a little bit in the past with that plan. Maybe it hasn't been the best succession plan. So I get it, but it is possible.
My thing with choosing between one and the other and who's a better candidate, I think in this situation you go with the better candidate, because if you look what Mike Payton had to say, and it was very true, when you have a good culture, good players, and a good operation of your team, those coaches that are underneath the OC, they're usually the guys you bring up anyhow, if you believe in what you're doing. I think it does. And a lot of people don't want to hear this. And if you listen to the Bussin' with the Boys episode with Derek, Will, and LaJuan, he mentioned the guys. He mentioned the coaches. The players is what matter the most in all of this. So if you got a stud quarterback and you got a stud group of dudes around him on both sides of the ball, I think that level of play lasts. I think we look at what Kansas City has going on with Bieniemy leaving, right? And you say that lasts there. Or it's all across the league where these dudes get poached. But if you got the players, and I think that's the biggest thing to that point. And, of course, you're going to always have to worry about coaches leaving. And so here's the other side of it. If the head coach is not good at play calling when he becomes a head coach, do you fire him still again too? Because that's what Mike McCarthy's dealing with right now, right? Is you looking at both sides of that? Or do he finally give up the play calling duty too. And I love when Alvin calls in. He always gives you deep thought questions and conversations too. It's just fascinating that the culture and the players always matter more in these situations.
One thing that I think Mike Payton brought up that I think is a great point, and what I specifically think about when thinking about what the Lions have done that other teams can learn from, get rid of this positional value crap and just draft the best player. Just draft the best player, especially in the first round. And I get it. The Titans are in a situation this year where overwhelmingly left tackle is the biggest need. Overwhelmingly. And of all the needs you have, that's the one that is most often addressed in the draft versus free agency. I get all that. But we've seen so many bad picks here that are based on positional value. And let's go with the premium positions. Let's go corners and left tackles. And how many times is that working out? Look at what Detroit has done in drafting an inside linebacker early, a running back earlier than you think, going with Sam Laporta. Like, just draft the player that you know for certain is going to be the best player, and then sign that guy for less money than what it would take to sign him as a free agent once he gets to his second contract. That is how you build a team. If you don't have a generational quarterback and a Joe Burrow, a Tom Brady, and all these guys, that is how you sustain success in this league. Just pick good football players. And I know that sounds so simple, but it means sometimes going against what the nerds in the back of the room say, I say that respectfully, about positional value. You got to have a balance between the two. 615-737-1045. I'll catch you up on headlines coming up next. We will recap the show so far, what Coach Mack, what Mike Payton have had to say about Aaron Glenn, who again was predicted as a leading Titans candidate yesterday and then confirmed as a candidate to us by ESPN's Jeremy Fowler on the show. We can play you that. We could play you the Derrick Henry quote on why the culture in the Titans locker room felt a little different this year. We'll do all that. Get ready for Hour 4 next.
It's Ramon and Kayla here for Window Nation, and winter is here, okay? The air is already cold, but your energy bills will be at all-time high, okay? So now's the time to replace those old windows with 0% financing for 5 years and 50% off all style of windows, too. Now is the time to protect your family from the elements, lower your energy costs, and upgrade the look and feel of your home.
And here's a question for y'all. If your windows are leaking, is that the case? That can cause serious structural damage and cause your home to grow mold in it. That's not what you want. Do you feel a draft when you get up in the morning? That also means your windows are probably not great, and you need new windows from our friends at Window Nation. And especially the winter months here, it's cold. You want to keep that heat in to sustain energy. 30% on energy bills is what you can save, and then you can pretty much have that be the case in the summertime when it gets really hot and you want to keep the AC in. When it comes to Window Nation, they have installed nearly 2 million windows, 96% perfection, making them one of the top window companies in the entire country. And Window Nation installs year-round, so you don't have to worry about them only coming out in the warm summer months. They can come out now and get it done, and then you're ready for the rest of winter. That includes replacing windows room by room to maximize your comfort during their one-day install. So give them a call, 866-90Nation, or simply log online to windownation.com.
What's going on? 9 o'clock. Good morning from the 104.5 The Zone studios. I'm Robert Walsh. Two coaches who were believed to be in the hot seat will seemingly still coach their teams in 2024. Jerry Jones putting out a statement yesterday reiterating his faith in Mike McCarthy. The Cowboys have gone 12-5 in each of the past 3 seasons and had the NFL's #1 scoring offense under McCarthy this year. And also in the NFC East, Nick Sirianni met with owner Jeffrey Lurie and is expected to have a plan on how he is going to improve the Eagles. This pitch included potential new coordinators and new assistant coaches. And in the Titans coaching search, the Titans wrapped up a virtual interview with Dan Quinn, having contacted Bengals offensive coordinator Brian Callahan to schedule a second and in-person interview for the head coaching position. Callahan did a virtual interview last week, but in-person interviews cannot happen until the start of next week. Divisional round this weekend rapidly approaching, and the Ravens are getting healthier. Mark Andrews, who was injured on a November 16th game against the Bengals, practiced fully yesterday. Andrews has yet to be activated to the active roster, but they do have a spot for him if he can play on Saturday. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and the Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Fourth and final hour, 9 a.m. already in snowy Music City as we welcome you in 60 more minutes of RKW, brewed up by 8th and Rose. 615-737-1045 is our number. Appreciate Coach Mack and Mike Payton joining us so far. You can join us as well on the phone lines right there as we talk some NFL divisional round football coming up in 20 minutes with the Thursday 3. And if you miss any of the show, download the 104.5 The Zone podcast network, which is at your fingertips on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. You can search Zone Podcasts, every show on demand or live from a show, right there for your listening pleasure. Wherever you download podcasts, RKW has its own dedicated feed as well. We haven't had a new review in a while.
Of what in particular?
Like on Apple Podcasts. Like it's been a year or so since someone has reviewed us.
Oh.
No way.
It has been.
It has
So
been?
someone give us a review. If you like the show, if you're a member of our core group of listeners, of fans, just go to Apple Podcasts. If you don't like the show, I would encourage you to keep your thoughts to yourself.
Stay out.
And maybe just,
No, make yourself known.
Okay.
I want a name attached to it, and then I'm going to delete it. No one else will know but me who you are.
What is your favorite phrase, like county crows or counting crows of Ramon Foster's? So just put that in the Apple Podcast reviews, and we'll all meet there and have a conversation together, like a group chat.
Yeah, I'm into that. Yeah, musical names that you've messed up all your life. You know what I'm saying? County crows.
I wonder what Ramon would rather count. Would it be crows or his wins in the Thursday 3 coming up at 9:20?
Oh, no.
Oh, my God.
That's a radio professional,
There's
Ramon.
a tease right
and,
there.
and Robert
my
Walsh.
brick?
So since
tease.
Ramon Foster made a 5-game bet on Pittsburgh Steelers money line, Ramon's record would have been 19-37.
Yeah.
Instead, it is 15-42.
Great year.
Dog. Come on.
15-42. Columbus sailed the ocean blue. Is that how? No?
That sounds like a alcohol beverage right there. You got some 1542?
1542. Ramon lost you bills of blue.
Oh, so now you just a freestyle, huh?
I'm sorry, that was a good little rhyme.
So now we're hip hop.
Drop a beat right now. Come on.
We're dropping a beat now too. Oh my gosh! Next year I'm coming back strong. Just so y'all know. No, March Madness. I'm winning it. And
You're
we're
going to dress
doing
it
a
up and
pool.
make it real for us?
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
dressing up
how
and make
long
it
is
real
this
for
going
you.
on for? Are we just going to take these
Whatever
into
that
other
means.
sports?
You might wait to the end of the Super Bowl.
So my vision for the people is that we go all the way through the Super Bowl, but that in the Super Bowl we're making, like, we include prop bets, right? So you can go like over under on receiving yards or rushing yards or passing yards.
There we go.
We could do Gatorade flavor.
I love that.
We can do over under on Reba McEntire's national anthem.
Yeah,
that was just announced earlier.
Okay.
amount of features in Usher's halftime show.
Yes. I can't wait for that
the
show.
amount of they do a bet like that?
Yeah.
No, I'm
Oh yeah, it'll be
I
like
think
what's
they
his
do.
yeah, no, they do. Like what his first song would be.
Sure.
What how long he performs. There's all kind of props you can do for stuff like
It'll
that.
be
You
fine.
don't even know this stuff.
My buddy actually got the prop for National Anthem taken down the year that it was in Tampa because he was outside of the stadium during rehearsals recording it, and he put out the tweet that said the rehearsal was a minute and so long, and every book took the prop off
Great.
because
That is
of
awesome.
him.
It's a
It was your
great
friend,
claim
huh?
to fame right there.
More an acquaintance. I wouldn't like to. I don't group me in with him.
Who you are, who you hang around.
Good old Zach Maskovich getting a shout out in Nashville. Who would have thought?
The
Heck,
criminal.
That's pretty funny.
I'm calling him the criminal.
Not me. Who would have thought?
They had to take it down because of that.
Golly, that's actually pretty wild right there. Yeah, there's too many eyes on that to actually just say how long it's going to be out. Do they give you over under on time, like a minute 42?
Yes.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
It's over under on time.
Yeah.
That's an easy bet right there. You put $5.
Sometimes.
You put 5 on that.
Sure. I'm looking for, again, the coaching odds. Speaking of that, because I'm curious, did we, move any lines yesterday from
I'm sure they did.
Jeremy Fowler on the show, Bobby Slowick and Aaron Glenn? 2 names to watch. Let's do another betting odd roundup around the NFL, shall we?
A betting odd roundup?
Yeah.
We're talking
Who
about
the
our
favorite
records?
is for each job. No. Just the current lines. If you would like, if you are a degenerate that wants to bet on which coach is going where, Bet Online has this available to you.
Wow.
Next Chargers head coach, minus 500, Jim Harbaugh.
Yes.
So, Jim, welcome to Los Angeles. Next Commanders head coach, minus 225, Ben Johnson, Detroit Lions offensive coordinator.
I'll go with that.
Next, Eagles coach, if not Nick Sirianni, which no longer looks likely, minus 150, Mike Vrabel, which is fun.
For Eagles, if
Philly.
Sirianni's not
If
there?
Sirianni's not there, but
He's likely
probably
staying.
going to be there. Next, Falcons coach, Bill Belichick, minus 125.
And that might be aided by the fact Ian Rappaport just put out a report. Former Patriots coach Bill Belichick will have a second interview with the Falcons brass this weekend after meeting with owner Arthur Blank one-on-one this past week. Things are ramping up in Atlanta.
There you go.
Can you imagine Ludacris welcoming him to the stadium?
No.
Jermaine Dupri.
Move!
Like Big Boy from Malcolm. Like, hey, Bill, we're going to take you around Atlanta, man. First stop, Magic City.
Let's
Somebody,
What do you think of this place? Wings are great.
we're on to Magic City.
Oh, boy.
Somebody said that
Have
it
fun,
was
media.
like when Robert California was being interviewed to be the new manager of Dunder Mifflin Scranton, and then he said, "No, I'm conducting this interview."
Yeah,
Not
and then
some
he started
soft
interviewing
bone
them.
debutante.
Yeah, that's right. That's what Bill Belichick did with Arthur Blank.
Absolutely.
Where were we? Next, Panthers coach. This is the one with the most options. Kellen Moore is the favorite to be the next head coach of the Carolina Panthers.
I'm not going to go with that one.
That makes sense, though, because that's the job that you want the least. So that's the bottom of the barrel offensive coordinator candidate. Ben Johnson second, Mike McDonald third, Brian Callahan fourth for the Panthers.
Where does Todd Monken stack in there? I thought that would be a good spot for him. Just being, he's an older guy, never got a shot as a head coach.
He is not on the list.
Wow.
Has he had any interviews?
Oh, no, yes, he is. Yes, he is. Yes,
He had
plus
one-
1,100.
He had a virtual interview with the Panthers.
Plus 1,100.
Okay, yeah.
They put some money on that plus 1,100.
I kind of like that.
At the bottom of that
You're
list,
really
you have
pushing for that.
Deion Sanders at plus 10,000.
Okay, no.
Robert Griffin III will be betting on that.
Say it's at
You guys-
$100 to win 10.
You guys see that the other day?
With RG3?
Yeah.
I'm not a.
RG3 on Twitter said the Cowboys should fire Mike McCarthy and hire Deion Sanders.
Yeah, I just.
When they say stuff like that on the big networks, respectfully, because I got friends there, I always think, is it contract year? When you saying stuff like that.
We thought that with Orlovsky.
Yeah, Orlovsky. Yeah.
Orlovsky, excuse me.
And it may be.
He's just weird. Respectfully,
Dan?
I like Dan Orlovsky, but he's just genuinely a weird guy.
He's ramped it up.
But
too.
I respect Dan so much because he is willing to get roasted, and he has thick skin and takes it and does not care.
They take away from their talent when they do those types of stuff
I
and they
agree.
say that type of, like, I don't know. It's weird to me.
I know.
They're very talented people
Well,
on
sure.
those shows. I hate when they have to do this type
You
of
don't have
stuff.
to go overboard, though.
No.
Next, Seahawks coach minus 110, Dan Quinn.
Unfortunately, I kind of feel like if Mike Vrabel doesn't surface soon, that could very well be the case. And I don't necessarily love that for my Seahawks.
And then most importantly, Titans, the top 5 coaches, according to Bet Online. Bobby Slowick, number 1, plus 175. Dan Quinn, number 2 at plus 300. That one does not make sense to me. Aaron Glenn, 3rd, plus 400. Brian Callahan and Mike McDonald tied at 4th at plus 600. So they've got Brian Callahan not getting a gig this time around.
Yeah. Wait another
cycle.
Does he have to have somewhere else?
Does he have to have the play card in his hand calling it? That's what you're asking yourself. Because not a lot of these coaches have experience with managing people anyway. It's a couple of guys. Slowick just got his first stab at it. And then, of course, Callahan out of Cincinnati is – he's not calling it, but he manages it. So which one are you asking him to do here if he gets hired?
Yeah, I like him still. I've heard enough firsthand that makes me feel like he's ready for the next step.
Okay.
And he stayed there enough in Cincinnati to feel good about that. I think it's on, like Coach Mack said, it's about selling yourself to the organization more than anything. So I'll go with that bet still.
I think he's got to get away from Joe Burrow, personally.
So you think he could be the OC here?
No.
If he doesn't get the head coach job?
Not necessarily. I mean, he could, but that's not what I was implying. I just think he needs to be tied to a reclamation project because when we have the Brian Callahan conversation, one of the positives in his favor is Jake Browning.
Yeah.
And how good that offense was when Burrow went down, T. Higgins went down, and you just had Jamar Chase and Jake Browning, and you won football games against good teams. That, to me, is the biggest positive in his favor right now. And that's why I think Bobby Slowick is getting so much shine is he took a guy in C.J. Stroud who this time last year, remember, we were talking about him being in the low percentile of the S2 cognition test. Yeah.
Well, that's my point. If he stays with the Bengals, he's never going to get away from that. So if that's the case and he doesn't get a head coaching job, you would think then if that's the situation, he wants to go somewhere else to prove he can do it with a actual quarterback that needs development.
If Aaron Glenn's the coach here, then yes, I think Brian Callahan could be a fit.
That's what I'm saying.
But if Bobby Slowick is the coach here, I wouldn't imagine that you're bringing in a Brian Callahan type because that's a lateral move for him. Non-play calling OC. He's going to go somewhere and call plays. Right. And if Aaron Glenn's the guy here, then maybe that is what maybe he is the OC here. That'd be great.
That feeling with as broad as they're casting their net, one of these guys who's a coordinator could actually be on staff here too to prove themselves to that same point.
I kind of like that scenario.
Thomas Brown is the one that really interests me as the Matt LaFleur in this.
Offensively.
As the guy who was just the OC of the Carolina Panthers, who's not going to be as hot of a commodity because the shine that's going to wear off from being associated with Carolina last year, but another Shanahan and Sean McVay coaching tree guy. And those don't grow on trees.
No.
On the coaching tree.
I had no idea Thomas was calling plays like this already.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Well,
I did not.
And it was very publicly written about in Carolina that him and Frank Reich kept exchanging play calling duties like twice.
I do remember that conversation.
Frank Reich took it back and then gave it back up and then took it back.
Seemed like a mess.
And they rallied better under Thomas, didn't they? Towards the end of the season, whatever that rally was.
I don't know. Frank Reich, I think, had it to end. Robert's on the phone right now. Otherwise, he'll, being the Carolina guy, can give us clarity on that. But I believe that Frank Reich had it at the end of the season.
Yeah. We're loaded up with calls. I guarantee his opinions about this coordinator job that's coming up or this head coaching vacancy.
Coming up next, we'll start with Mike in Cleveland, catch up on your phone calls, plus take a look at the divisional round weekend, the Thursday 3 on deck on RKW.
It's Ramon Foster for United Structural Systems. When it comes to large home repairs, a lot of the time we homeowners pretend we don't see the warning signs. We're afraid of what we're going to hear. This is especially true with waterproofing and foundation repair. It could be something big that needs to be fixed right away or a small problem that'll become bigger later. or it can be nothing at all, okay? Bottom line is we don't know, and we certainly don't want to be sold something we don't need. We need a peace of mind. The United Structure Systems is the company to give you that. They have an attitude and culture. That's the reason why they keep their employees year after year. So when somebody comes to your house, they're going to have experience in what they're doing. They're not going to oversell you on something to try to meet a sales quota or anything like that. You can believe and trust in USS because homeowners trust USS. Keeping homes dry and stable for over 25 years. USS serving Middle Tennessee, Southern Kentucky, Western Kentucky, and Northern Alabama. You can reach them online at USSTN.com or call them 615-488-7855.
Hour 4 rolls on at RKW, brewed up by 8th and Rose, 615-737-1045 as we take you through the Thursday 3 coming up in moments. Guys, I'm going to tell myself I have not even looked at the odds. That's a lie. I've looked at them. I've not put any picks down. I went 3-0 last week doing the picks in the break before we did them, so it's not broken, and I am not daring to fix it.
Don't. Absolutely at all, Will.
Maybe that's good news for you. Let's go to Mike in Cleveland on the phone line, 615-737-1045. Hey, Mike.
Hey, I got back.
What up, though? Hey, yo, I got a comment and a question, but first I'm going to go ahead and give y'all a review. Y'all was talking about a review.
Please do.
Y'all, and, you know, I'm in a good mood this morning. You know, I'm feeling real blessed. I'm feeling real jiggy this morning. So I'm going to tell y'all, man, y'all got a dope show. Y'all always been had a dope show. The Zone does a phenomenal job, even with all the changes that's been over all the years that I've listened. I've tried to listen to Cleveland sports stations, especially with, you know, this year with the Browns. I almost called them the Bruins, but anyway, the Browns getting in the playoffs and stuff, and y'all do a great job at going across the league and going across, you know, different sports stations, keeping me laughing. So I appreciate y'all keeping this old truck driver entertained every morning.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
Man, you a real one, man. Hey, save that and play it on commercial, Bert.
Promo.
I might put it on the album, man. I might put it on. But anyway, yo. But yeah, so with the Titans, you know, this franchise seems like it's always had development problems, developing players, and I've always wondered if it's us, you know, with that same narrative to where we trying to find players to fit into our scheme, and it seems like we don't never have that offensive minded coach that can scheme towards you know what his players does the best. And so that's where I'm at with this. I want an offensive-minded coach. We keep seeing, you know, these defensive, you know, old defensive coordinators, old defensive-minded coaches that come in, and we keep running the same old offense and the same schemes. I'm like, go ahead and bring in that fresh offensive-minded blood that's going scheme with what we got, because we keep seeing players that do horrible in our offense, and then they told, well, you need to go block for the run here that can scheme for the players that we got. You did? And so that's where my mindset is at, man. I don't want to see another DC. I don't want to see defensive minded. I want to see offensive, innovative schemer. The reason KC is still working because Andy Reid is still working for that offense. And that's all I got, y'all. Deuces. Much love.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
Appreciate
Drive
it.
safe out there.
Word to the wise, if you praise us, we'll let you call in and skip the line anytime.
Good advice.
Really good advice, bro.
Does that count as an Apple Podcast review?
It does not yet.
Shoot.
We'll get there. Spotify works too. We won't discriminate.
Absolutely at all.
Apple or Spotify. Wherever else you get your podcast. Richard in Winchester is next. 615-737-1045. What's up, Richard?
Hey, what's up? You know, offensive coaches, they get fired too, just like defensive coaches, offensive mind coaches. The guy from ANZ in Detroit, I just interviewed, he made me take a second look at Slowick, not on the plus side, but on the minus side. The minus side is that I have family in Houston. I have two brothers in Houston, so I follow, you know, the Texans about as much as I follow the Titans. Now, Casey Keenum beat the Titans when he was filling in for CJ. But I think the other games that CJ missed, they didn't do that well offensively, and they end up losing. So are the Texans' success more CJ-induced than Bobby Slowick-induced? Or is it a 50-50 combination? We know what CJ did to Georgia in that championship game. So CJ may have already been a baby-made man by the time he got to the Texans. He just needed some chiseling. I think Slowick should maybe do like Ben Johnson and stay another year to see if he doesn't have a sophomore slump.
Right.
Because what makes me nervous is that without CJ, he's probably just maybe an average coordinator. And if he comes to the Titans, that may be his sophomore slump year, as opposed to getting someone like Ben Johnson, which I don't think the Titans would get. I think he's going to D.C.
Right.
That's my comment.
Yeah. Thank you, Richard. It's a good point. And I think the thing with C.J. Stroud and Houston is it certainly raises your eyebrows a bit more that he was able to do that with a rookie, because the coaches around a rookie quarterback matter. Look at Bryce Young, the quarterback that everyone in the draft process told us was better than C.J. Stroud. And the crap show he went to in Carolina, you could make the argument Carolina had more bona fide, known commodity playmakers around Bryce Young than C.J. Stroud had in Houston. I mean, you have Adam Thielen, you have Miles Sanders, you have Hayden Hurst in Carolina. What did you have in Houston? Nico Collins, who is an athletic guy who hadn't proven it over the course of an entire season. Tank Dell, a rookie who they turned into a stud. Dalton Schultz, who is a good tight end from the Cowboys. And then a question mark at John Mechie, who obviously is a first-round talent who hadn't played a ton. I keep going back to what Peter King wrote in his column on Monday, that per Next Gen Stats, 8 of C.J. Stroud's 21 passes on Saturday were targeted to receivers who had at least 5 yards of separation from the nearest defender.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. And that's why I think they're looking at some of these guys specifically that have helped develop quarterbacks from at least what you see, right? Because even Kafka, I know we're not all high on Kafka, but I know Patrick Mahomes gave a lot of praise to Kafka when he came in and kind of helped develop him in Kansas City. So I think that's why you see a lot of these guys on the list too. Obviously, I think Bobby Sloak has a little bit more in terms of, hey, we like what you've seen, or we like what we see out of you. But that's a reason, because quarterback development is so important right now for Will Levis to be able to continue that if he is going to be your long-term answer.
He does. And here's my wish for what comes of this coaching search also is I'm hoping the Titans do what's right for them on this one. As all the names that we're throwing out there and all the endorsements that people have gotten, again, to the same point that Payton has stamped. Who did he stamp? Adam Gase.
Adam Gase.
Yeah.
He did that. And Patrick also did Bieniemy, and Patrick did Kafka. And all these guys are having these people that are great quarterbacks telling them that they made them greater or better, whatever you want to call it. But here's the thing about Payton. Here's the thing about Patrick. And here's the thing about C.J. Stroud that we're figuring out in these moments, too. These dudes are just good. When it comes down to coaching good players, coaches always want. Hey, that's why recruiting is so big, too. I almost feel like I hope we hate to hire, because maybe they see something in themselves, in that coach, that makes this team a better foundation. It makes this team, it gets this team on track. I think that's the point that I think a lot of this fan base has been making. They're tired of chasing everybody else's dudes. You chase Julio. You chase Clowney. You chase everybody else that wasn't your guy, and it turned into nothing. That, to me, is why I'm hoping this fan base gets upset about who they pick, because maybe it's the dude that this Vols fan base also didn't like in Josh Heupel.
I was going to say the same thing.
Yeah,
Right.
I hate to correlate one, but the fan bases do intertwine. That's why we had a fan base here that was hating on Will Levis or hated Will Levis, even while he was making plays for this squad. Like, that, to me, is where it's at. And if it's Slowick, beautiful. If it's Kafka, beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
If it's the name that we all have been throwing around, Bobby Johnson or whoever the heck it is, too.
Bobby Johnson.
We've heard it so much. It's Bobby Slowick, right?
I know, yeah. He was the old Vandy coach, Bobby Johnson.
OG Bobby Johnson.
Who he never cussed. He would say, dag nabbit on the practice field with his Vanderbilt players.
But what I'm saying is, and I know we're all in the same boat with this conversation, you got to hit. Because if you don't hit, then we're changing coordinators and coaches again to a Will Levis that everybody believe he has talent with. And is he the focal point of all things moving forward? I think so. I do. I think Jeff's going to be fine in leading that defensive side of the ball. But when it comes down to saying, if we fire a coach, we probably going to get a new quarterback. Your O-line probably ain't set either. Your defense probably isn't as good. And then in this arms race of defining what the AFC South is, you are still in last place 3 years from now.
There's so many more parts to this teamwork because they're missing so much, right? That's the thing. It got to get so much right. But let's just start with what they have to do from the start is get the head coach that then can get in the right pieces to fix the other problems.
Real quick, before we get to the
Taylor.
Thursday 3 and give our picks, I think, is it fair to say if Bobby Slowick is not the head coach of the Titans, then he's back in Houston next year?
Depending on his other opportunities, if he's presented with the head coach job,
Right.
I think that's hard to turn a head coaching job down. I personally think he could go back and continue to build his resume and be a solid candidate next year to maybe another place he'd rather go.
Well, that's what we're saying, right? Is that we just looked at the Vegas odds of
Yeah.
every opening, and there's a minus money favorite for every opening except Carolina, where everyone kind of has a guy that's earmarked so far, except here in Carolina. And the earmarked guy, Vegas-wise, is Bobby Slowick here. I am of the opinion that if he's not here, he's back in Houston next year.
Yeah. I agree with that. And you're in a similar situation with the quarterbacks for me. If that's what we're focusing on with him, I think Carolina, here, and Houston are his options. I don't know if there's anywhere else for him.
I agree. And I think, I think he could be the Ben Johnson of this cycle.
Sure.
Who is 100% a head coach in 2025, but maybe not in 24, because you got to prove it again after 1 year as an OC, and you were a defensive quality assistant a couple of years ago. I just think the connection to Rand Carthon is why it's either here or the highway.
And that's fair.
Let's get to the Thursday 3. We're going to do something a little bit different today. We're going to give all of our picks at once. Like as in, we're going to go one by one, and then you give your 3, then go to the next person. They give their 3, go to the next person, and do it that way.
Yeah, let's do it.
If that appeases the people. Robert is 35-22. I mean, my goodness, man. Save some bread for the rest of us. 2-1 last week. Kayla, also very impressive. 33-23-1. I am coming in at 28-28-1. I'm 5-1 in my last 2 weeks. Don't let me get hot.
28-28-1 is still very impressive.
Is
That's
it,
a
what,
great gambling week.
48%. Anything close to 50% is solid. Ramon Foster is also participating. Robert, you start us off as our leader in the clubhouse going into the divisional round.
I love when our games get tight like this because you're really forced to look at what you know about these teams. And what I know is that I know absolutely nothing, and I'm just going to follow my heart. Much
Heck
like you will,
yeah.
I put these bets together the segment before this started. And I'll start with the opposite side of the AFC, where the 2 and 3 are meeting. That is the Bills and the Chiefs in Buffalo. Correct? It's in Buffalo. They got
Yes,
the
it
seed.
is.
It's in Buffalo.
Patrick
Buffalo.
Mahomes' first road start in the playoffs.
And I don't think that he will get his first road win
Boom.
in the playoffs. I'm going with Buffalo minus 2.5. Now to the NFC, where the Lions are taking on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Baker Mayfield show has ended. I think the Lions are just the better team. When you look at the Bucs, it looks like they captured lightning in a bottle last week, but I don't know if lightning can strike twice. I think the Lions cover the 6.5. And they say when you get somewhere, you've got to dance with who got you there. And although the spread is very, very large, on my paper I have Texans plus 9.5 written down, but I've always been someone to go off the page a little bit. I think the Ravens cover the 9.5. They did it in week 1. I think they can do it again. I really should hedge my happiness here and take Texans plus 9.5, and the worst thing that happens is that I'm wrong. But I believe in my team. I think the Ravens can do it. I think the Ravens can not only win, but win dominantly. I think the Ravens cover. I'm taking Ravens minus 9.5.
Interesting. Going with 3 favorites.
I know. Unlike me. Love the dogs.
Okay.
For all the dogs.
Kayla Anderson picking second.
Yeah, so like Robert, I have 2 of the picks he has. So I am definitely going with the Buffalo Bills minus 2.5, right? Is that what we got it at?
Yes.
Okay. I just think with this being Patrick Mahomes' first trip on the road for the playoffs, and they haven't been entirely consistent this year. There's been problems that continue to rear their ugly heads. I feel like that is a situation where it could, right? And the Buffalo Bills, they just can't get over the hump. Like, I feel like they owe their fans, and they know this, they owe their fans a good run to the Super Bowl. So I'm going to take the Buffalo Bills at minus 2.5 for that one. As for the Detroit Lions, we continue to be believers here, I feel like, in the studio. I like Baker Mayfield and what they have done. I just think when you go to their house right now, I don't know if you heard Dan Campbell last week. He said, this was the most electrifying atmosphere I've ever been in when I stepped out of the tunnel. I just feel like they're going to make it really tough for the Buccaneers to come in and play. And no, it is not outdoors. They don't have to prepare for the weather, at least. That's just a joke on an interview that happened earlier this week. So I'm going to take the Lions at -6.5 in that one. And then I like what Matt LaFleur has done with this team in terms of getting his quarterback going, playing some really good football right now. Matt LaFleur has been in the playoffs before. He's no stranger to that. I think it is Jordan Love's first run in the playoffs, but I think he's got his team believing. I think he's confident. So I don't think they're going to win this, but I am going to take them at +9.5 over the Niners.
All right. I will go. I'm really tempted to change one of my picks now after hearing y'all.
Change it.
Yeah. I really want to change the Chiefs, but I'm not going to. There's too much confidence against Patrick Mahomes.
I can see that.
Around the country, Vegas knows what they're doing. This is a rat line to me a little bit because I would put Buffalo at 5 or 6. But if it's that low, there's a reason. I don't care. I'm still going Bills.
There you go.
What's going to happen is that line is going to move down a point, and I'm going to get it at Chiefs +1.5. I want the extra point is what I want. Or no, sorry, it's going to move up to 3.5, and I want to keep it within a field goal. So once it moves to 3.5, I'm taking Chiefs, but I will bet Bills at 2.5 because I think Bills by a field goal that's a value number. So Bills -2.5. 9.5 is a big number in Baltimore, and I think there is some kind of magic that C.J. Stroud has right now, and it is a risk taking a rookie quarterback making his first playoff start on the road in his career. But there's also a big reward in that. And I think one of the 2 1 seeds is going to come out flat. I'm going to bet on it being Baltimore. Derek Barnett, the Houston Texans defensive end, who, yes, I went to high school with him, and yes, I'm a little bit biased, has been a man possessed since he put on a Texans uniform. I think he is a big factor in this game in containing Lamar Jackson with the help of, obviously, Will Anderson. I think Mark Andrews coming back, though, is what worries me. Right, that Mark Andrews can kick that offense into an even higher gear. But I think 9.5 is too big of a number. I am not as big of a believer in the Lions this weekend. I think the moment gets big. I'm not confident enough in Baker Mayfield, though, either. So I will take the under. I think it's a defensive struggle between the Lions and Bucks. 48.5 is a very high number in a playoff game. So give me Lions, Bucks under 48.5.
You mentioned with the Texans, you mentioned Derek Barnett's going to be very important, and he is because Will Anderson and Jonathan Gennard have both been on and off the practice report with limited and DNPs pretty much for the whole year, but this week especially. So pressure is on for the former Vol.
And then Ramon Foster.
Real quick for me, I'm going college basketball Saturday. Baylor, Texas.
Wait, what?
Okay, that's fine.
That's
great. Now the rules have changed.
The rules, whatever's going on the weekend.
I never knew we could bet on other stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Baylor, Texas. I'm taking Baylor. I'm taking Baylor just off the basis of Texas being
number?
soft last night.
Let me look.
Ain't no number, I don't think. Well, the one I looked at ain't have a number up just yet. I got Baylor either way money line, just flat straight up. Just on the basis of Texas being soft about the horns down. Do they not know what the SEC is going to do to them? Okay? Thank you. All right. My hate comes through real, okay?
It does.
Also, Baltimore, Houston. Give me the 9.5, Bert. I'm rocking with you this weekend, okay? Yeah, I'm rolling with my dog.
Notice he did not say I'm rolling with the Ravens because that would have been recorded.
Just what you
Rolling with
wanted
my
to
dog.
hear.
Absolutely not. And then last one to really cap this thing off real well. I am a big Detroit fan. But I'm also Baker. I believe in what Baker got going on, and offensively they've been cooking. They got a lot of vets on that side of the ball. They will compete well with Detroit. I'm taking the +6.5, but I like Detroit to win.
Mon,
yeah.
What do I have to do
To make you switch.
to get you to change your bet?
We locked in, Bert.
Grab a bucket and a water. That's what you need to do.
All right, if you're locked in, I'm locked
waterboard
in.
me.
615-737-1045. Final call for phone calls. We'll wrap up the show next. Wrapping up the show on RKW, brewed up by 8th and Rose, 615-737-1045. The final call for phone calls. Coming up next, the Lucas Panzica Show with Robert Walsh.
I love that show.
I'm told. Robert, how are we feeling? 4 hours down, 3 more to go.
I am a marathon man, dude. I could go 6 to 1, 1 to 6. It don't matter to me. I could be here all day, baby. I love it.
Do you need anything from us?
I think I'm good.
Coffee? Okay.
I think I'm good. I just got to make a run to the little producer's room, and I'm back at it.
Diana Rossini of The Athletic writing minutes ago, Eagles coach Nick Sirianni will meet with owner Jeffrey Lurie and will be expected to have a plan for how he will improve the team. League sources said this will include a pitch on potential new coordinators and assistant coaches. Diana Rossini tweeting this out a few minutes ago and said, all eyes on the Eagles. The latest, and then linked that story. I'm wondering if that isn't totally a done deal that he's back yet.
Oh, man.
I think he probably is.
Yeah. He probably has to make concessions somewhere where they're going to be like, look, lose Brian Johnson, lose Matt Patricia, lose whoever these coordinators are who can be a scapegoat for you, and bring somebody in here that makes the people stop throwing snowball or battery-filled snowballs at our office.
That's fair. I'm with that.
Got to give Jeffrey Lurie his taste.
He's listening at you.
I mean, he wears the Italian flag on his visor, Nick Sirianni. He's got Big Dom over there that freaking looks like a Tony Soprano's driver in the last season.
That's the big question. Is Big Dom back next year? Was he a distraction? Was he a big distraction?
615-737-1045.
There we go.
He
For the next show.
Yeah, for
you
real.
tell us. I gotta get tired of the Big Dom stuff.
For what reasons are you speaking of?
Nobody should be shoving another player on a sideline unless, like, hands are being thrown and you're trying to break it up.
Yeah, that's fair.
That goes for Nate Oates as well, who was given a public reprimand yesterday by the SEC.
But was he really? Absolutely not.
He was deducted 10 points from Gryffindor for touching a Missouri player. I tweeted this out. If I'm a coach and the other coach on that sideline touches one of my players, I'm getting a technical at the very least. I'm storming over there. That is not going to happen. Could you imagine somebody doing that to a Bruce Pearl player?
Oh, my.
Oh, goodness.
I mean, seriously. Hands would be thrown.
Either way, he's supposed to call the ref over in those moments right there. Because if you'd have swung on him, then it would have been a problem. Oh, the player's wrong. Control yourself. Like, Nate's been in this boat before. I get what he was saying. Like, hey, go to your own side. And here's the thing, too. I don't want to jump too far out there because I don't know what him and that player's relationship was. Like, if he recruited the heck out of him, which I probably assume he did at some point in time. So it'll be fascinating to see what all comes out of it. But a public reprimanding, like, no, keep your hands to yourself, Nate.
Pete Nikos of On3 writing a few minutes ago, Ohio State is traveling down to Georgia today to make an in-home visit with Alabama defensive back transfer Caleb Downs. Number 1 player in the portal, and Georgia the team to beat there.
They looked bad for a minute. They looked like they were losing some players, but now I feel like they're gaining back some momentum. I'm not saying that they're going to get him, but
Got Will Howard, Kansas State quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
What's crazy, though, is at the college level, the safety position is very important.
Sure.
Very important. But in NFL, it gets minimized.
Yeah, ask Jalen Hyatt how important the safety was who was guarding him in the Tennessee-Bama game. But that guy's at the NFL now.
I know. Well, he went to Detroit.
Yeah, Brian Branch.
Yeah, Brian Branch sure did.
One of those safeties.
And people were still shocked. He was supposed to went first round. What do you
went early second.
Early second, sure
Again,
did.
take the best football player.
Take the best football player, dog. But that is fascinating. Nate got to keep his hands to himself when it comes down to amateurs like that, too. That's never okay. Again, I don't know what the relationship was like, though.
Tennessee putting out revenue increases yesterday. VolQuest.com writer Brent Hubbs, of course, who joins us every Friday at 7:20. You'll be able to hear from him tomorrow. Football contributions went up from $28 million in 2022 at UT to $39.7 million in 2023. How about this from men's basketball? Men's basketball contributions from donors, $2.8 million in 2022, $13.3 million in 2023.
It's making it happen right
You'd take a 500% increase any day of the week.
That's making it happen. Golly, do they have the increases for football?
Yeah, I just said it a minute ago.
Oh, you did?
$28 million to $39 million.
That's big time.
So again, that's a, 60% increase?
I'll tell you what, and I'm going to get ahead of this because it upset my near and dear to my heart. Okay, my wife, we watched the Lady Vols
oof.
about 2 days ago.
Yeah.
You want to talk about some frustration. Like, it don't look like what the DNA of that team is supposed to be.
They're in Starkville tonight against Mississippi State.
When do you make a change if it
this offseason? There's going to be a change this offseason.
Kayla, like, I don't like to talk about people getting fired or let go and all those types of things. But if you have a standard and everybody else is reaching theirs and you're not reaching yours, it's obvious.
Yeah. Tennessee ticket sales up 13% last year, according to the Vols fiscal report. Donations overall up 90%.
Holy smokes.
90%. Fiscal year of 2022, $32.7 million, up to $62.2 million of donations. That is the Danny White effect, ladies and gentlemen. Concessions and parking up 83%. Royalties, licensing, sponsorships up 34% for the Vols in the fiscal year of 2023. All of that to buy a new women's basketball coach, which I think will happen. And I think Danny White will be willing to go outside of the Lady Vol family, and I think it's time to.
Vols fans, we are crazy, but we will support.
Mm-hmm.
One note we will get into with Brent Hubbs tomorrow. Targets who could be committing soon. I think Tennessee will have one of their big targets committing early next week.
I hope so, man.
I'm hearing things that could be transpiring that I think Monday or Tuesday.
Yeah.
We could be hearing from a big Tennessee target.
This is where those dominoes start to fall this time of the year, right?
Once the snow melts.
Yep, once the snow melts. And that takes you all the way through July where it gets really crazy for college recruiting.
So we've got 2 5-stars we're watching that we'll talk to at Brent Hubbs tomorrow. One offensive lineman from LSU who could be a Vol any minute. And then a quarterback here locally that perhaps could be making a decision soon.
By the way, man,
we'll see.
Go Vols. I just needed to say that.
Hey, why not?
My cup. You know this water I've been drinking on as of late in the studio?
Essentia?
Bama tears.
Friday, and we'll act like it tomorrow.
I got some too.
The Lucas Panzica Show is up next. Be safe out there, everybody. If you don't need to drive, don't drive. Ramon Foster sent us home.
Please, y'all, as Will just said, be safe on the roads. But at all times, man, your Twitter fingers and your mic is always hot.